Okay, welcome. My name is Reynaldo Vasquez. I'm with the Small Business Administration. I'm an economic development specialist, but I'm also the veterans representative for the SBA. We cover 14 counties, from Cameron to Zapata to up to Aransas County on top of Nueces. So we do have a lot of area to cover. Me, myself, I'm a veteran, 3 years active duty. I was up in Fort Lewis, Washington with the 25th Infantry Division. Now I'm in the National Guard. I've been with the Guard for about 7 years. May even retire from the Guard now. Work experience, I work with Immigration Customs Enforcement. That's probably my first federal position. And then I transferred over to the SBA once I got my degree in business. I worked with small businesses before. I helped my mom, my mother-in-law build their businesses, and they're both accountants. So I learned a lot from them. My mother-in-law right now has 4 businesses, 2 accounting firms, an adult home care, and a medical supply business. My mom continues to do her accounting. My grandpa actually still owns a mechanic shop in Mexico, so he's an entrepreneur as well. I've worked with T-Mobile before. When T-Mobile first came down to the valley, we had to do a big ramp for hiring. We hired about 3,000 personnel just in Brownsville alone. So that went pretty well. That's actually my first and only private industry, big industry. But then I think the government has treated me well, from the military to the SBA. But today I'm going to talk about financing and the options you guys have to start or expand your business. Following is the ETP's mission, which is the Entrepreneurship Training Project, provides comprehensive training for individuals seeking to create, sustain, and expand businesses in the Rio Grande Valley, increasing their chances for long-term business success. And I'm probably going to call you guys so you can read, because I'm going to run out of voice here. So just to keep you guys active. Attached, these are some of our partners that we work with. And from the VBOC standpoint, the SBA, which we're here representing. The Texas Veteran Commission that we work with a lot. They help a lot with grants. They're a very good partner to work with. The University of Texas Pan American, of course. The Small Business Development Centers, which are very similar to the VBOC, but they specialize with the general public. And the VBOC is mainly for veterans and their spouses. And the military transition offices, which when you're getting out of the military, we work a lot with them. That's something pretty new. We try to get veterans coming out, try to inform them. So once they get out, they have the resources available to them to take advantage of. And other veteran organizations and nonprofits. I work with the SBA, and we are a nonprofit because we're federal government, but we also work and network with a lot of other veteran organizations. That way we can communicate better and outreach to our veterans. So even sometimes I may not have the answer, I can direct you to somebody that can help you out. So financing and funding module is really the financing part of it. Objectives: learning how to identify the funds needed to run your business, identify potential sources of funding, and how to compare alternative funding choices. I'll go over these in a little bit more detail. In case you have any questions, just feel free to stop me. I do talk pretty fast because this is kind of second nature to me. And then I had a Red Bull, so it kind of speeded up my process a little bit more. So why do businesses borrow money? Startup financing is probably the number one. You need money to make money. That's ideally everybody wants $1 million to start their dream business. But there's a process you have to go through, and from private lending to banks, you have to go through a process and understand that process. So you can be ready in that position to be able to borrow money. Working capital is needed to operate a business. Expansion, a lot of us that have businesses already want to expand, want to become better, want to become bigger. and refinancing, which, originally you may start off in one situation, but refinancing can not only help you pay less interest, but also give you more working capital for your own business. The investment process. Identify the potential investment and the expected return. Identify the necessary resources and project duration. Estimate the project cost. Identify monies required to fund. And all these are really covered in the financial statements, which is something I really stress out to individuals. When you're doing the business plan is important. But for me, doing the financing, the funding, I look more at the financial statements. Because that's what's really going to tell me what you need your money for and what is it being allocated for. And I know the VBOC and the SBDC, they're great partners to rely on for that. And I don't just say that just because I kick a lot of my referrals to Bill and Carlos, but they help you understand what exactly you need and how much you need. And every time I talk to somebody is, you have a number in your mind. I need 100,000. Well, what do your financial statements say? Because your financial statements will tell you exactly what you need them for and put everything in detail. At the end of the day, you're asking for 100,000, but after you put everything on paper, you may end up needing 150,000. Because you're putting in working capital, you're putting in equipment, so different stuff that comes out. It's always best to put it on paper. Business investment idea. Once you have identified your business, you should identify if it will be profitable. This will involve planning out the cost of the necessary resources and the expected cash flows from the businesses. And it's going over the cash flows again. Have you guys ever worked on financial statements or cash flows? I'm pretty sure Chuck has. Chuck's been in business for, how long you been in business, Chuck?
1984.
1984. A little bit. I think I was born in 86, so a little bit before my age. But it's about, 20, 30 years?
30 years.
Almost. And I know you said you're barely starting up, Alicia? And what was Felipe, are you looking to start up a business, or what kind of business are you looking to start up? Still? Okay, self-employment. Veterans are very natural for self-employment. It's just something we do. I don't know, it's just because we want to break out and do our own thing, or we have the skills to do that. But yeah, once you have an idea, you want to identify it, and you want to know not only how much money they're going to make for me, because you want to pay yourself, but how much money is the business going to bring in. Because I talk to a lot of veterans, and you go into business because you want to do what you want to do. You don't want to work for nobody else. You want to become self-employed. There's a lot of advantages of becoming your own boss. But ideally, or ultimately, profits will determine how successful your business are. And when you're looking to expand, when you're looking to do other things, financial institutions and lenders, private lenders, they're going to look at your profits. They want to see how good the profits are and how good the business is being run. That's why profits are very important. Next, we do have an example just to break down the business process, the financial process, and this is a typical business that you'll see. And especially down here in the Valley, restaurants, I think even nationwide restaurants are very general. This one's a barbecue place. You mind reading that, Felipe?
Michael, an accomplished, competitive barbecuer would like to open a restaurant for the Barbecue Palace. Michael projects a startup cost of $65,000 with an additional funds needed in year 2. Michael has approximately $20,000 in cash to invest in the business. To open the Barbecue Palace, Michael will need the following items: a $35,000 barbecue pit, $10,000 worth of inventory, $3,000 of consumable supplies, $3,000 for advertising, $2,000 for furniture, $3,000 for updating of the location, leasehold improvement, also need 9,000 in cash in the bank for working capital needs for his first few months of operation.
Okay, thank you. This is a very normal situation, but I will highlight this. Most entrepreneurs won't have the 20,000 in cash, a self-investment cash. So this is more of a perfect example for the scenario. And this does happen a lot. This is typical, startup business. You want to work for yourself. You have a competitive advantage. He's a accomplished barbecuer. So he has that unique selling, but the 20,000 typically you won't see. But for the scenario, we have the 20,000 in cash. He's looking for 65,000 to get it started. Most of it will go to the barbecue pit. Looking at 35,000. So let's break it down for a financial point of view. How the bank's going to look at it. So they want to see the investment on the owner. Investment in owner is very important. A lender, private lender, financial institutions, they're always going to see what you're bringing in. If you're asking for 100,000, they're going to ask for 20% of self-investment. They want to see you put in some money. They want to see you be involved into it. And that's why they break it down by investment by owner and the loan. So let's put everything into the blanks. Working capital. You have 9,000 on hand working with. You're asking for 10,000 more from the bank. You have 9,000, you're asking for 10,000. Equipment, right now you have 3,000. You're asking for 35,000. That's mainly going to the barbecue pit. Furniture, you already have 2,000 that you can work with. Improvements, you already have that you put into the business 3,000. You can show this to the bank. I've already put in 3,000 to improve it. Startup expenses, and that's for advertisement and grand opening, $3,000 that you've already spent. And this is stuff you can show the bank. Look, this is my self-investment. I've already put into it. So you're looking at 20,000 that you put in and 45,000 that you'll be actually borrowing. Most of it going into the equipment and working capital. So this is identifying what you need and showing the bank how much I put in already. This is actually a very good scenario. But like I was saying, most people won't have the self-investment, especially the 9,000 on hand. So that's something I want to emphasize. Every time that you're looking at an amount, at least calculate in your head 20% of what you'll be asking for. Because that's what the bank's going to want to see. You're asking for 100,000, make sure you have at least 20,000 worth of self-investment costs. So that way you can show the bank that you're committed to what you want to do and you have collateral. Lease or buy. Okay, this is the lease and buy option. Going to cover equipment and real estate. Which one to select? The lease versus buy decision typically arises when equipment depreciates quickly or the investment is great. Technology, autos, be an example. The lease versus buy decision is based on a comparison between the net present value of the buy alternative with the net present value of the cash flows associated with the lease. And I'll show you exactly what this is talking about because this goes a little bit more technical. What you need to know, the present value of the equipment. If you're leasing equipment, you want to know how much the equipment is worth. In this way you can compare if it's better to buy or you can do with leasing. Most of the times, buying would be the best option. The only thing you need to think about, sometimes you don't have the option to be able to purchase the equipment. And I was talking to, what was your name again? I'm sorry. Israel. I was talking to Israel about the camera when it came in here. It's a pretty fancy camera. Now I'm thinking I don't even want to touch it because it looks like a $100,000 worth camera. So I kind of wanted to see how much it was. We're looking at about $15,000 to $20,000 just on the camera. If you can do, ideally you would want to purchase the camera, so you could have it with you. But maybe in some scenarios you won't be able to purchase that camera. So you have to look into the option of leasing. How much would it cost me to lease? Especially for technology, that it updates so quickly. Sometimes the best option will be to lease. So if you have $15,000, $20,000 in hand, you could buy the camera. This is including everything, but if you can do with the leasing, it may be a better option. And it comes the second point, the future value of the equipment. And you want to know the salvage value. After we're done with the camera, how much would it be? You need to know not only the equipment that you're working with, but how much it's going to be later on when it runs its cycle. Every equipment will have its cycle. That's the economic life for depreciating the equipment. Everything has its cycle, and you want to know when it's at its peak value and what it will be 3-5 years from now.
Based on like IRS depreciation schedule?
Yeah, and these with the depreciation, you always want to get with an accountant, because they can give you a percentage of what you'll be looking at and what you can be able to claim. And really, an accountant should be able to tell you about the Job Creation and Worker Assistance Act of 2002, which offers a special bonus depreciation amount equal to 30%. It's always, it says always take it. It's recommended on most equipment to take it. So that's something I would always recommend talk to an accountant about. They're very good at figuring out depreciation on value. And especially when you're working with financial statements, they're great to have one because they help you maximize the value of the property that you have. You want to look at the term of the lease. You don't want to, if you're a startup business and you're doing 3 years, you don't want to be in a lease for 5-6 years. If your goal is to move out, to lease for 3 years and move out in 5, something that you need to keep in mind. Especially landlords, a lot of them, once you're in contract, they'll obligate you to it. So that's something you may want to look at. And that's like I was telling you before. Ideally, you want to have the $1 million to buy your own property and build, but realistically, it's going to be more, the only option you're going to have is to actually lease. The lease payments and frequency. See, the payments right here and the frequency, well, some of them differ. Some of them will be monthly, some of them will be quarterly, some will be semi-annual. The main thing you want to look at is the payment amount, because that's going to affect your working capital and it's going to affect your debt to income ratio, which I don't think the debt to income ratio goes into the slides, but I'll go over it a little bit just because it's so important when you're working with banks. And I'm pretty sure private investors look into the debt to income ratio as well. The operating cost of the equipment, how much does it cost? Not only if you own it, how much is it going to cost to actually operate the equipment? And that's another incentive leasing has. You don't have to worry too much about the operation cost. The cost of the debt, how much would it be total? How much am I taking in? Required rate of returns and the tax rate. Equipment, that's, you have to, and it's, taxes you're going to pay for them. I think one of my sergeants always used to tell me, there's only 2 things you have to worry about in life, is paying your taxes and getting up every morning. And he had a very simple mindset, but it comes back to the taxes. You have to be responsible for your taxes. He also said that we were in Iraq at the time, and he was like, the only thing I need on me is my bayonet and my American flag. So that was always his mentality. He was very plain, simple. He really didn't ask for too many, but he did understand what he needed to do. You guys have any questions on this? Good. I'm going to quiz in about 10 minutes.
Cost of debt, that's the interest, right?
Well, it factors in everything. How much you're looking at when you bring in equipment. If you buy something, if you buy it for $100,000, how much am I paying completely? If you plan to pay it off in 3 years, you're looking at, you'll be saving, of course, an interest rate if you finance it at 10. Usually for equipment, when you finance it, you're looking at 7 to 10 years for the equipment. Real estate, you're looking, 15 to 25, 30 years. So that's something you need to factor in when you say cost of debt. You have a mindset of when you're going to pay it, but ideally, and now by law they need to show you how much it would be. When you take out something with interest rate, it'll show you the actual value if you do the minimum payments for the next 10 years. If you take it out for $10,000 at 10%, they'll show you that you need to pay 11. If you do the increment, if you do the minimum payments, it'll show you that you'll be paying $15,000 at the end of the cycle. So that's something always to keep in mind. Of course, if you plan to pay it off earlier, that's something that you'll be saving money on. But it's good to know where your money's going. It's good to have a plan and allocate it. If you're going to be paying doubles because you're going to pay it off in 2-3 years, that's something that you have in mind as a business owner, that you're going to be saving yourself money. And it comes off your book, so you don't have to worry about it. Any other questions? I know there's questions on that one. So how do we obtain funding? So there's a lot of options to getting money. And I'll go over the pros and cons on them. There are advantages and realistic advantages that you'll be looking at. Sources of funding. These are just some of the sources of funding that we've been looking at. Bank term loans, which is probably the more traditional and commonly used ones. SBA guaranteed business loans, which I'll go over, and I'll tell you the pros and cons on the SBA guarantees. USDA loans, which are a little bit separate, mainly for rural and agricultural businesses. Micro lenders, which are, I'll go over more of micro lenders, and alternative financing options. Individual development accounts and private loans. So bank loans. They're basic commercial loans, typical carried fixed interest rates, monthly and quarterly repayments, set maturity dates. 7(a) loan rate may adjust. Okay. And like I was saying, these are more basically used because that's what's out there in the market. If you're looking for money, the first thing you think of is the bank. That they're the ones that have my money. I could go straight to them. And even the SBA, we don't do any lending. We used to back in the day, but now everything goes through lenders, and we serve pretty much as guarantors to them. So there's things to know. There's no such thing as 100% financing. That's more of a myth. It comes down to, like I was telling you, self-investment, and everybody wants to have a piece of pie. So even banks get their interest, they get their money, and even private investors, which is another option, they want something for what they're gonna for the money that they're lending you. So I always keep that in mind. There are no government grants to help you start a for-profit business. There are grants available. I do get a lot of questions. The SBA got this grant. The SBA doesn't give out grants for businesses. The SBA, what we do, we give our grants to our resource partners so they could give free technical assistance to the public. A perfect example is the VBOC and the SBDC. Our grants that the SBA gives out go strictly to the resource partners so they can go out and provide free technical assistance to you guys with business plans, writing up financial statements, doing marketing and research. And when they come, it's like I tell everybody, it's not like I'm throwing you to the SBDC or join you to the VBOC, but it's a free service that we've already paid for and that you've already paid for as with your taxes. So it's ideal for them to help you out. And we work with them hand in hand because every business loan that we do, we need a business plan. You know, one of the requirements for getting an SBA guarantee loan is a business plan and getting those financial statements. And they're also very helpful. Mm-hmm.
What about when the government, tries to incentivize going into certain type of business because of whatever
like the exporting or
like renewable energy or green construction?
There is a website called grants.gov, but as you'll see there, and you'll see all these grants available, and you'll see most of them, I would say about 90% of them, are for nonprofit businesses. And the very few that there are for a profit business, they're very, very detailed. So you can go after those. There are very little of them, but you're looking at first finding out if you qualify for the business. Second of all, following up with the requirements. You know, they need a business plan, they need financial statements, whatever they do need, and then you have to follow up with them. So it is a lot of paperwork, very time consuming. I've never seen a grant given out for a profit business, I'll tell you that much. I don't know exactly if they're out there for marketing purposes, but most of them will go for nonprofits. Have you ever seen a grant? Yeah. And me and Bill work a lot with the financing part of it, and it's very rare. I've seen some out there, but I've never seen anybody actually get one. So most of them will be for nonprofit businesses.
But nothing as far as through SBA loan.
No. The SBA, and I'll go over a little bit more about what how the SBA financing works, but yeah, and the grants, I do get that a lot. The SBA got this grant. Most of them are already allocated for nonprofits, and you can start your own nonprofit. Get self-employed. Pay yourself a salary for doing a nonprofit charity. So that's a lot what people have done, but they're just relying on grant money, or private investors. So another thing you need to know, SBA doesn't lend out money. The SBA serves as guarantors to lenders. A very big thing to know is the SBA only comes in when needed. If you can go into a bank, you have collateral, you have cash in hand, and you could you go in there and you ask for $100,000, and you qualify, straight from the bank, from your relationship with them, because of what assets you have. If you want an SBA guarantee loan, the SBA won't come in and assist, mainly because you don't need it. The SBA is only ideal when you need collateral, when interest rates are too high. That's when the SBA is ideal to use, and that's the only time they'll come in and assist you. So that's something you keep in mind, because a lot of people go in there, or not a lot. I'd say some people go in there, they want an SBA guarantee loan. Well, the banks are not going to give you, and the SBA won't assist you if you don't need the help.
I guess I just figured that the interest rate would be lower with a guarantee.
Not necessarily, because the individual could have guarantee with collateral. If you have collateral, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why the SBA comes in. An entrepreneur just won't have sufficient collateral, and of course, then the SBA can come in and help you. But if you have collateral, the bank will see that and will use that for your loan. Your credit history is important. A lot of people won't agree with credit histories, credit scores, but it's kind of like standardized tests. It's used throughout in the industry. And with financial institutions and even some private investors will look into credit score a lot, you know, especially financial institutions. I was telling Chuck earlier, in order for you to get an SBA guarantee loan, your credit score has to be a minimum of 640 to 680. You're looking at, depending on the lender, different lenders will have different criteria. Some of them will even work down to 620. Ideally, the credit score that you want and the credit score that banks are looking for to give you the best interest rates is 720. If you have a 720 or above, you're pretty much guaranteed the best interest rates available. So it's like I tell everybody, me myself, and I don't recommend anything that I wouldn't do, but me myself, I have credit monitoring in my accounts because I know the importance of credit score, and I like knowing when something happens. You know, sometimes you'll apply for something and be like, oh, we're not going to run your credit, we're not going to do this, and then boom, you know, it pops out on your credit. It's a hard inquiry, and it takes away points from your credit score. So it's something that you want to keep in mind. You know, especially if you want to improve your credit, if you're dedicated to improving your credit 100 points, you know, for me, it's worked out. The monitoring, you know, you can monitor from where you're at to where you want to be. And we, the SBA, we have a lot of workshops. I don't know if you guys have workshops for credit, to teach you credit. There's a couple of things that you won't learn in school, you know. One of them is credit. And I think it's very important, especially because we use it in everyday life. But they don't teach you, you know, and the way the credit scores work, your credit history, how it affects you in everyday life. Something you kind of learn throughout. And the SBA, what we do have workshops, and we bring in experts for credit scores that can help you out with that. So if you guys are interested, you know, you could. We do have a newsletter, and I'll show you our SBA.gov website for our local page, so you could subscribe if you want to, especially if you want to attend the workshops. The other thing is real estate. You know, real estate is very important and something that they don't teach you in school, unless you go for specialized real estate school. And there's something else I was gonna say. Oh, financing. You know, I think financing is very important. Unless you go specifically for finance, it's something they won't teach you. And that's something you learn throughout life. And I know I'm pretty young myself, but for some reason I've gone through those three things that you just don't learn in school. Or, you know, for real estate, I had to go out of my way just to take real estate classes, just so I could learn, just because I was so involved with real estate. And for credit scores, I've had the opportunity with the SBA to learn it. And throughout my life, I have pretty good guidance of credit scores. And one of my best friends is a personal banker, so he's helped me out and understand the importance of the credit score. Even though we don't like the system, that's the way the system is, and that's the system we do have. So moving on. A lender will most likely require a personal guarantee. This is what I was talking about, the 20% at least. You know, some businesses, they have higher percentage of failure, so they're going to be looking at more than 20%. Do you guys want to take a guess of one of the businesses that have the highest risk of failure? Restaurants. Yeah. Restaurants. Everybody wants to open up a restaurant, and mainly because of the numbers. Everybody wants to open one up. There's the most applied for, but they do have high risk of because not a lot of people want to get into it. There's a lot of competition. Most of them aren't managed well, so you know there's various reasons for why restaurants do have a higher risk of failure. So government guaranteed loans. Okay. I don't think I gave you a list, Felipe, but I gave Chuck and Alicia one. So the SBA has guaranteed programs that can help you finance your loan if needed. And in the list there, you'll see a list of all the programs. And I love that list because it breaks it down to you. What every program is, what it can be used for, the interest rates you're looking at, maturity rates. What else? Who qualifies? Guarantee fees. And it breaks down every program. For veterans and their spouses, the Patriot Express program is probably the best. Every situation is different, but the Patriot Express program is very good just because it's an express program and the interests are pretty good. Let me go over them real quick with you. The 504 and the CDC loans. This is a loan working with three parties: the SBA, yourself, the banking institution, and a local community development corporation, which most cities will have, and we work with them. Pretty much, the CDC brings in a portion, the financial institution brings in a portion, and the SBA brings in a portion to guarantee up to 90% of your loan. So this is one of the better ones. The only thing is we need to have every party involved. And the CDCs and the EDCs, their main objective is to bring in businesses. So they're going to want to see job creation. You know, that's going to be an important one for them. They want to see the incentives that you're bringing in to the community. And working the bank, it just helps with the guarantee because they're taking less risk, and the SBA can guarantee up to 50% on this. So it's a very good loan to use. If you're interested, our lender relations specialist, Maria Perez, is great with this. She works with our local community banks and our CDCs to train them to use our programs. So if you're interested, let me know. We could always get something started on that one. And the only thing on these is that we need involvement from all three parties. What's going on, Chuck?
Can you give me an example of the local CDC?
The one, we do have one in Brownsville. It's called it's Mr. Dan Alanis, the one that runs it. And I could give you their information if you like, but it's Brownsville Community Development Corporation. And I believe they cover Cameron. I'm not sure if they cover Hidalgo. Are you here in the Hidalgo area or where? Yeah, I could always find a CDC here in the area, but that's the one I'm more familiar with.
They're distinctive from EDC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're different than the EDCs, but they work very similar. And that one, like I was saying, it goes up to 90% guarantee. 50 and then 40 from the CDC. Basic 7A loan programs. Most of the SBA guaranteed programs will be 7A. And when they say 7A, it's just our general standardized guidelines for our loans. There's different ones. Our main one is the 7A, which goes up to $5 million. A lot of paperwork involved in that one. It does take, anywhere from 60 to 90 days to get approved through the SBA once you've already sent in all your paperwork, but it's because of the amount of the loan. Anything over $150,000, the SBA will only guarantee 75%. Anything under $150,000, you're looking at an 85% max guarantee. I think I have it in here in the. It's the first one actually on the list, and the quick reference to SBA loan guarantee programs. You can find that one online. We have it on SBA.gov, and it's just a list of all our programs. Okay. SBA microloans. SBA microloans are good to work with if you're asking for lower amounts. I think our microloans go to, let me just double check on that one. Yeah, it's $50,000 for microloans. When you want to have something quick start up, you don't need too much money. The microloans are good to use. And we do rely on our micro lenders to do these as well. We don't use, these aren't very used because the guarantee only goes up to 50%. So these aren't used too much. The SBA Express loans, very similar to the microloans, but the express loans are easier to work with. I know Chuck was kind of concerned on the guidelines, restrictions. Express loans are better to work with. Something I always tell individuals, and it just, one of my best friends is a personal banker, and I just don't say that just because I have a good relationship with my banker, but I always recommend, especially if you're planning to work with a financial institution, a bank, have a good relationship with your bank, because if they want to make it work, they can make it work. And having a good relationship with them helps out. And that's more of a personal side note. You know, work with them, get involved, ask questions with them, because they can show you and they can inform you on different ways to get the loan done. And the express loans from the SBA, you do get a return or a yes or no and a guarantee amount within 72 hours once the paperwork is completed. Community express loans are good to use. These are more localized for startup businesses. One of the things you need to know, national banks won't do startup business loans. They find them statistically higher risk of failure, and it's an option that they decide not to do. So we try to work with as many local community banks as possible to not only give them competition and give you different options, but to provide more opportunities for you guys to get financing and funding for your projects. Special purpose loans, we do have very few of these. You know, more SLA, looking at dealership programs. I don't think this one goes more in detail, but these are good for specialized businesses. Seasonal business, you're looking at cap lines. If you need working capital or lines of credits, we do have them. We do have guarantees. If you look at the list, you look at the cap lines for contracting, seasonal, for builders, you know, they have cap lines as well. And those those follow the 7A regulations as well. And then the Patriot Express program, which is one of the better ones, and it's for our veterans and their spouses. This program goes up to $500,000. Anything up to $150,000, the SBA can guarantee up to 85%. Anything over $150,000, you're looking at 75% max guarantee. And it's an express program, so within 72 hours, where your full, complete application is turned in, the SBA can give you a yes or no, and how much we can guarantee. Interest rates on the Patriot Express, you're looking at, I think it's 2.225 to 4.75. And I think prime right now is still 3.25. So you're looking at 6 to 8%, basically with the SBA guarantee. So it is good to use, if needed, of course. You guys have any questions on these? I try to go a little bit more in depth on those, just because I know a little bit more on those. Okay, the 504. I forgot to tell you about the 504. It's brick and mortar, so it's mainly for real estate. It's a big thing to know. These won't particularly go for working capital. They want to see real estate involvement. So this one could be up to finance 25 years. And it says the 504 program provides small businesses requiring brick and mortar financing with long-term fixed rate financing to acquire major fixed assets for expansion or modernization. The 504 loan will offer funding up to 90% of the project firm value. And it's 50 from the SBA and 40 from the CDC. USDA is another federal agency that does help out. And they do have their own programs. Their type of industry is more agricultural and rural. Business and industry program, this loan is for profit businesses located in the rural areas. And those could go up to $25 million, 30 years For real estate, you're looking for maturity 15 years for machinery and equipment and 7 years for working capital. And these are great to use, but you have to be in agricultural business or in a rural area. So they want to see development, you know.
I had applied for one back in the day,
Mhm.
and we were going fine until they discovered we were buying a business in El Paso.
Mm,
Even though the headquarters was gonna still be in Edinburgh, they knocked it out.
yeah, because they want to see economic development in the rural areas. They want to bring employment. They want to, and if you do contracting, you have special incentives for you to do businesses in these kind of areas. And it's just more for economic growth. Micro lenders use other factors in conjunction with credit ratings in assessing firm qualities like motivation and experience. Smaller loans for businesses that are unable to qualify for conventional loans. Collateral such as vehicles or businesses, equipment, and proof of the value of the items you want to use as collateral. The biggest microlender that we work with down here is called Acción Texas. They do use 2 of our SBA guaranteed loans, but primarily their target market is micro loans, and basically anything under $50,000 they can help you get. And when your credit isn't as good as they like to point out, when you don't have such a perfect credit score, Acción's a great resource partner, and other micro lenders are a great resource partner to use because they get the job done. Interest rates, you know, when you're looking at, when they're not looking at credit scores, interest rates are a lot higher. So that's something to factor in. And when I go over, when I compare them later on, I'll show you the advantage and disadvantage of microloans. But you know, if you have a quick turnaround time, it's a good option to explore. You know, if you're planning to get your funds quickly and you just need to start your business, the microloans are good to use. Quick turnaround. You know, you're looking to start a business, you want to get it done. You know, these, and they're easier to work with too. They take almost anything as collateral. As you can see, businesses, equipment. They even take inventory. I think they do $25 for inventory, but you know they do take it in as collateral. You guys have any questions on microlenders? Alternative funding sources, family, you know, it's one of the options. If you have family that has money and like you enough to lend you money, you know, go ahead and explore that one.
Your rich uncle.
Yeah, if you have a rich uncle that likes you. Credit cards, which is another option, you know, it does get the job done. Of course, interest rates are higher. Grant contests, you know, you could always enter one, but time consuming and you have to follow up. So it's if you don't have time, it's probably not the best way. Leasing, you know, pretty much borrowing money from an individual, a big company. Supplier credit, trading credit, seller financing, angel investors. You guys know what angel investors are? Pretty much third-party investors. I'll lend you, if I don't know you, I'll lend you $100,000 to start your business. The only thing about angel investors and venture capitalists, you know, they're known as sharks. You know, so you have to know what they want. And that's how I always tell everybody, get it. If you do third-party financing, I'm not saying it's, you know, in some situations it's probably the best way to go, but just make sure you know and you have in writing what exactly they want. And a lot of them will just take percentage of your business. So in a way, it's an incentive. You know, they want to see you make money because now they're part owners of your business. Grant loans and individual development accounts. You guys have any questions on those? I know they're very vague options. But you know, if when there's a will, there's a way. So if you can't go through a bank or you don't want to go through a bank, there's other options you can explore. I like this graph. I don't know if you guys get do they get a copy of the PowerPoint slides or no? Okay. So this one pretty much tells you, it's kind of like the SBA guaranteed. Does break it down to you, gives you the pros and cons of every different type of funding. You know, you have your personal savings, which you know, you look at the cost, which is rate of competing investors. You know, it's pretty much what you saved up. You know, you're not gonna. It's on your own funding. Payback terms are none. Sizes, you know, it depends on how much money you've saved up. It's easy and cheap, and risk of loss is, well, it's your money. It's what you saved up, so it's all you have available. Friends and family, that's another type. Usually good rate, you know, if anything. Most friends and family will give you a good rate, but you know, payback terms are flexible for the most part. They're flexible, valuable, and best value. You know, of course, they always say not to mix family and friends with business, and you know, it creates friction. You know, especially if you can't pay them back, or depends what they want to as well. So a good investor will always have something in contract, and even a friend or family, because it's business at the end of the day. Home mortgages, you know, you're looking at traditional. They're pretty good. You know, of course, your risk against is losing your house. You know, but you know, you're putting the mortgage up. Flexible, 80 to 100% of home equity and value. Do you guys know what equity is? Equity, very important in financing. If I have a house, it's worth $100,000. I only owe $20,000. You know, it's appraised at $100,000. And I have $80,000 worth of equity in that house. It's something you could use as collateral. You know, if I wanted to take out a loan on that mortgage, that's what they'll be able to lend me, because it's appraised at that money, and I only owe the difference. You know, they won't be able to give me the debt on that. So it's another option. And you know, the interest rates are pretty good on those. Credit cards, of course, you're looking 16 to 23%. You know, they do get the job done if you need money. Most credit cards do start at $3,000. You know, some of them, you know, some of them do go pretty quick. But just be careful with credit cards, because it's just interest rates are too high. Sometimes, and especially with your monthly income, with your monthly payments, that's something that affects your debt to income ratio a lot. Person to person online, you know, this is pretty new, and more of the angel investors, looking lending club. But make sure you know what they want. Like I was telling you, suppliers, you know, they're short term, they're inexpensive. Venture capitalists, you know, this 20 to 40% is because most of them want percentage of your business. Commercial mortgage, leasing companies, SBA guaranteed. I like the against. It can be a complex process because of the paperwork. You know, it's you know, lenders have shied away from it because of the regulations that the government has put on them. But throughout the years, we have become pretty flexible. Financing companies, most of them will be micro lenders, and they don't take credit scores into account. So you're looking at 14 to 30% average. And banks, you know, this is when you could qualify yourself. You know, they do provide pretty good interest rates if, you know, you have collateral, good relationship with them. So which funding should you use? Can you read that, Alicia?
There should always be a preference for the lowest cost funding. As the maturity data increases, so does the cost of the money borrowed. Which loans the business gets credit for? Use the business credit card over the business debit card when possible.
And this is pretty much, basic financing, basic common sense, really. Well, at least for me, it's common sense. You always want to spend less. If you don't have to put it on cards, don't put it on cards. Always look at the interest rates. You guys have any questions on those? Pretty self-explanatory. The 5 C's. These are important for lenders. They look into the condition, character, capacity, collateral, and capital. How much capital you're bringing in, self-investment. Collateral, what do you have available? If anything goes wrong, what can they take away from you? That's pretty much the way collateral. Collateral could be cash, and it could be assets, such as equipment or land or property. The condition of the business, the condition of the term of the business loan. Character, they do want to see good character on the individual. They will run background checks. So they want to see good character and capacity. Capacity comes down to your debt to income ratio. And I'll touch on debt to income ratio just because it's so big. A big factor when lending money is banks want to see how much money you have available right now and how much debt you have. If you have $10,000 coming in on your income a month, they'll see your income, they'll see your debt. How much debt does he have on him? Well, he has $3,000 worth of debt a month. So okay, 3,000 minus 10,000, looking at 7,000. They'll usually look anywhere from 40 to 60% of that. I just say 50% of 7,000. So $3,500. You have a month to allocate for a business loan. That's what they're looking at. And that affects your capacity. $3,500 a month, that's what they're looking at for monthly payments. So what's the purpose of me lending you $100,000 when you can't make the first monthly payment of $1,500? And that also affects how much purchasing power you have. Now, ideally, you want the $500,000, but if you could only afford $100,000, well, that's all they're going to give you. So that's always big to have. Work on your debt to income ratio. When you apply for loans, try to have your debt on your credit scores as low as possible. You usually want to be at 80-20, 90-10, income to debt. So that's something, and because it allows you to go further in the purchasing power, and it's a good indicator for banks that you have good finances. You guys have any questions on those?
You're saying 80% of the income?
Yeah, 80% income to 20% of debt. So it's, if you have like 70 or 30-70, that's something that, they see you as a high risk, because you have a lot of debt coming already. So you won't be able to make monthly payments. So the loan's going to default a lot easier.
But on your financial plan, if you're starting from ZIP,
well, they look at personal income. If you're starting from ZIP, they'll look at your personal income. They're going to want to see financial statements. And I think, and I'll go over what documents you're going to need. So negatives on loan applications. No personal investment. You have no money bringing in. It's like they say you need money to make money. So if you have no personal investments, that's going to cost. Poor personal credit or low credit scores, just standardized. It's something everybody looks into. Just a lot of people do not agree with it, but it's the way it is. Unwillingness to personally guarantee loan. This is when you don't want to put up collateral. You have equity on your house or something, and you don't want to put it Businesses are risk. You know, you go into them to be able to make more money. So if you're looking into a business, just keep in mind that that willingness to personally guarantee what you have or put up collateral. No practical relative experience. This comes in when you're doing a loan application. They want to see your resume. If I'm going into a baking business and I've never done baking before, I don't know how to bake. You know, they want to know that, especially if I'm the chef of the business. You know, or if I do hire somebody else, at least I have manager experience, or what am I bringing into the business. No tax returns. You know, they want to see some sort of money. They want credentials, pretty much, of how much money you're bringing in. Negative equity position, and that comes down to you owing money or your debt. They want to see positive equity, pretty much for collateral. Consistent negative businesses earnings. If you're not making any money in the business for refinancing, this is a big indicator for them. It's something that they won't want to invest or refinance. Personal history issues, and that's just more personal, and it comes down to character. You know, you get in trouble with the law, stuff like that. Unwillingness to pledge personal assets, and that's, like I was saying, it's a risk. So, you know, you have to put up collateral a lot of times. Most of the times, no historical or interim financial data. Credentials are always good to have, you know, and that's why they look into the balance sheets. They look into your personal income statements. And bankruptcy is always a big indicator. You know, micro lenders will work with you more often for bankruptcy than financial institutions such as banks and the SBA. You have to be you have to be cleared from the bankruptcy. You have to filed either Chapter 7 or 13 and be cleared out of it to actually do it again. And then finally, these are some of the documentations you'll need when applying for business loans. Business plans, which the VBOC and the SBDC can help you. Financial projections for startup businesses. Financial statements for businesses that you already have or you want to start up. Business tax returns if you've already been operational. They want to see at least the last 2 to 3 years. Personal income tax returns, they're always going to want to see that. Personal resumes, they want to see what your experience has been. And legal documents, and this is more of contracts, business contracts. You have partners, or you have an angel investor or a venture capitalist owning your business. You guys have any questions on these? Pretty good. So summary, research your idea, estimate the startup costs and cash flow. Always know and have a plan. You know, always be prepared to what you want to do and how you want to get there. And the business plan and the financial statements can help you ideally get every detail done and get you goal oriented. Develop a business plan. Research your business plan. Make sure the plan makes sense. Be able to answer potential questions. When you go into a banker or a private investor, you have to know your business in and out, because you're pretty much explaining it to somebody that has no idea what you're trying to do. So if they ask a question, you have to be the expert in your business. Seek out funding. Just look at different options you have available. Some of them, a lot of times that'll be pretty easy because you only have one option, which is probably a good and a bad thing. You guys have any questions? I think I went over like 5 minutes or something. But if you have any questions, here's my information. You guys need anything, just feel free to let me know. If you guys want to, we do have a main website, sba.gov. You can look for us by location, just put zip code. Or the direct link to our local web page is here, sba.gov. And then about offices, content. It's more of it used to be /Harlingen, because that's where we're staying at. But for some reason, they redirected it. I think that's about it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. My name, again, just to review, my name is Colin Kane. I work here at UTPA at the Texas Rural Cooperative Center. The presentation that we're going to be discussing today is Innovation and Technology Management. Now, those innovation and technology usually go hand in hand. When you're talking about most businesses being innovative, it's about using existing technologies or developing new technologies to do something in a new way, to address problems in a new way. And that's something that all of us need to do on a day in, day out basis. What are some reasons why being innovative? I mean, we hear about innovation all the time these days. It's all over the place. It's sort of one of these buzzwords that even if a company isn't being innovative, you'll see innovative used 5 or 6 times on their website because it sounds cool. Part of it has to do with the fact that there is greater competition that all of us face every day in our businesses. And one way to stay one step ahead of the competition of our competitors is to try to do things in a new way that yield either greater value for your client, for your consumer, that they appreciate what you're providing them more and more every time because it's a better product, it's a better service, or you're maybe reducing costs on your end so that your profitability is going to be that much higher. Now, innovation and technology are 2 different things, but they usually go hand in hand. In this presentation, we're going to focus mostly on innovation itself and sort of tools and tricks we can use to try to bring an innovative perspective to the problems and questions that we deal with in our business. So the objectives today, to understand innovation management and these tools that I'm discussing, and technology management and different techniques and tools that we can bring to bear, like I said. So innovation and technology. So innovation, here the definition, making meaningful changes within your organization by introducing something new. That's a fairly general definition. And technology, inventory of knowledge about a set of industrial techniques used to develop products and or service for their delivery to customers. Innovation is essentially trying to take the next step with a certain issue, to make certain changes, like I said, that add value to the customer. You're trying to make changes that basically improve the product, improve the service, make people more productive. And to do that, you need to take sometimes wild steps forward that cause some type of revolution within your business in order to, again, provide additional value for your consumer. Now, there are different types of innovation. There are different types of change that we can bring to our business. Now, a few of them are listed here. Radical innovation, incremental innovation, radical system innovation, and next generation technology. I'm going to focus mostly on the first 2. Radical innovation and incremental innovation. Now, there's a basic difference between something like a revolution. A revolution is a complete change of a system, right? It is a complete alteration of the way that we currently do things. Whereas evolution is a sort of incremental change based on the way that we are doing something right now. Usually when we talk about innovation these days in business, we're talking about we're talking about radical change, radical innovation. That's what companies like Apple have really brought to the sort of popular mind right now when they think about innovation. They think of something like the iPod. The iPod was revolutionary in that it's a new device. It's beautiful. People want to purchase it. But basically, the real change that it brought to its industry is the music industry changed entirely because of the iPod. Whereas before, people were buying and selling music using analog devices. They were using 8-tracks. They were using, I guess before 8-tracks, they were using vinyl albums. Then they were using 8-tracks. Then they were using cassettes. Then they were using CDs. And there was a whole system based on producing the music, getting it onto those devices, and then selling it. Apple created this device, and basically the market exploded for digital versions of songs that basically made the entire business model of how to produce and sell music change, and you can still see the after effects today. I mean, they still haven't really figured that out. That's sort of a radical change. Whereas when you're thinking about incremental innovation, the incremental innovations would be, okay, once you have that device, that iPod, what can you do with this to make it better? What sort of changes can you bring to bear for this device to make it more useful to the client, to make it more valuable? So either you can charge more for it because it does more things, or you can reduce the cost. So again, you can keep the price where it is and more of the profit comes to you, goes to your shareholders or whoever the owners happen to be. More on the incremental innovation side, I mean, you can see today, do we usually see people with iPods now? Do you see a lot of iPods these days? I don't know if you guys are hanging out with lots of 12-year-olds. If you do, you see fewer iPods because technologies have actually converged where all the capacity, all of the functionality of an iPod is now where? Where do you find it? On cell phones, right? They've basically merged so that each step in the sort of innovation process, the radical change was creating this device that then sort of changed the music industry. But then basically once it became a touch device and phones were touch devices, you realized that you can combine these things. And that was an incremental innovation on the initial radical innovation. Now, radical systems innovations and next generation technology, not quite as important to what we're talking about, but next generation technology, it's sort of significant, right? I mean, there's incremental change where if you, again, go, not to use this example over and over, but I just will. iPhones, right? If you look at an iPhone, where's my iPhone? Right here. So there's incremental, like there are new generations of technology. There's the first iPhone, then the iPhone 2, the iPhone 3, and those are 1G, 2G, talking about generations. But within each generation, there are also changes that happen. This phone happens to be a 4S, right? So it has the same processing power. Basically, it's within the fourth generation of the technology, has the same processing power, all that stuff. But they added a few bells and whistles that make it an incremental innovation. Does anyone know what the 4S has technology-wise? It has Siri. I don't know if the S stands for Siri, but that's the technology that apparently made this, worth $100 and something to me, and then, that's why I spent it. So who's silly there? Probably me. All right.
S is for silly.
S is apparently for silly. It's a good example.
I want to take a picture. I reach for not a camera anymore. Now it's a phone.
Well, I mean, but this is what makes this device so radical. What are some other industries that the sort of iPhone and the iPods have changed entirely?
Kodak.
So cameras is a perfect example. Digital cameras, sales for digital cameras went down like crazy. There's another, I'm sure there's a bunch, but there's another very good example. So if I were in the 1950s, you would see a piece of jewelry on me, most likely, that I'm currently not wearing. A watch, right? The watch industry apparently has, I don't know that like the high-end sales have really fallen off, but the basic Timexes that people had to wear all the time, they don't need them anymore because of these cell phones. Again, that makes it a sort of radical change. It changed all these industries. And if you don't stay abreast of that, right? Let's say that you're in a certain industry and there are these radical changes that are happening. They're going to make it very difficult for you to continue to do business the way you're doing. If you're not on top of that, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. A great example of that would be Blockbuster Video. They saw, there are two major threats, right? Two major threats emerged to really, to sort of compete with them that had different business models that changed the industry altogether. Do people know what they are? There's two businesses.
Netflix and Redbox.
Exactly, Netflix and Redbox. Basically, Blockbuster was great because they had a wide variety of things and they were convenient because you could basically match whatever you wanted in that moment to whatever they had on the shelf, right? So Netflix comes along and they're almost as convenient and they have just as many options, but they do it online and they don't have the overhead of the stores, and so they can be a little bit more cheap. But one thing they don't have is, I want to watch this right now, on a DVD. And so Redbox comes along and they don't, again, have the same footprint. They don't have the same rents or whatever. It's a kiosk, and you basically get to choose from whatever they have. Those two things together really are putting a strain on them. Most likely they will be in trouble for a while. They had a choice. I believe this was in the early 2000s when they really saw that Netflix was eating into their margins, was eating into their market, where they could have gone to streaming or they could have gone online a lot quicker, and they chose not to. They said, this is our strength, we're going to stick to it, and they are currently paying the piper as a result.
Blockbuster has now, you can get them on Dish Network now.
On Dish Network.
It's almost like a pay-per-view.
So like video on demand. Absolutely. I mean, and so this is the way that viewership is going. They probably saw that early on, but they chose not to get in on that, right? And that's technology that takes a while to develop. So you can't really choose one day to get into the market and then sort of get all the advantages with that. It takes a while to develop. You have to develop the market as well. So you have to start early and then really pursue it. So for all of your businesses, you should be really taking a broad view of what are the challenges, what are the developments in your field or other fields that could affect your business, right? Let's say for something like airline storage, right? If climate change itself, not to say that it's real or not, but let's say that it is. Let's say that all of a sudden hailstorms are going to be way more common in this or in your particular area of the United States. There might be some people that are fine putting a tarp over their plane or something like that. They're going to need more storage, right? That's a development you want to keep abreast of, and therefore try to bring innovative techniques or strategies to be able to service that new market. That's something that is going to affect you.
See, sometimes companies gamble and try to ride it out, thinking, well, that's just
A fad,
trend,
right?
That kind of thing. Just like the self-ticketing.
Right.
When it first went into the airports. I mean, people were still hesitant to go to the machine.
Absolutely.
To use it. So really, they couldn't cut back on the number of people that were at the counter because they were just monitoring the self-service.
And that's a tough thing to know. I mean, if it's just you and you're trying to figure it out on your own, that could be a very difficult thing to try to figure out. Is this just a fad, or is this something that will fundamentally change, my business? And so my recommendation would be to talk to as many people as possible about it. Talk to people that know more than you about your industry. Go to a place like VBOC, go to a place like the Small Business Development Center that can get industry reports, people whose whole lives are dedicated to knowing what's happening in your industry and what forces are going to affect it, to talk to those people. That's a very good point. So purposes and reasons why bringing in sort of innovative framework to your business are important. What can we use sort of innovative processes to do in our business? Now, again, it's important to realize that even if you take a step back, usually when people hear innovation, they think of, when I'm talking about the iPhone, they think of Silicon Valley, they think of Stanford University, and I just sell insurance, or I'm a real estate agent, so I don't have to really worry about that. That is not true. I mean, we know it's not true. The basic idea is that we are in a competitive minefield and that you need to stay one step ahead so as not to be 3 steps back, right? And even if you're in an industry where technology isn't going to be used, as a small business, that is one of the few strategic advantages you have, is you are flexible. You can make changes quickly and you don't have to train 1,000 people how to use this one thing. If you yourself can figure it out, then you can make that change pretty quickly and get that advantage over your competitors. And so as a way to reduce cost, rely more on these new technologies that are coming up. That is a way to stay sort of one step ahead. So what are we going to be doing here? We're talking about using innovation to develop and roll out new products or services, which is a traditional thing when people think about innovation. We're going to talk something about that. Also use innovative techniques to modify existing services or products, right? So again, you're thinking, hey, I sell real estate. Well, this hasn't changed for many years. It's not going to change. It changed a lot when the internet started, right? Before, there were just real estate agents that had to actually shepherd people from location to location. And the internet came along and you could share photos, you could do these sort of online tours of houses that at least you could get a sniff of a place and then figure out whether you wanted to visit it, right? So those that first went onto the internet had that strategic advantage. And once you have that advantage, you have a much higher chance of keeping it as long as you are hungry and you're staying abreast of what the next thing is. To improve the delivery of a service or product, I mean, if you're handling actually physical product, being innovative in how you get it from point A to point B is an important way, usually to reduce costs. We're going to talk about lean manufacturing a little bit later, and that's a lot about limiting waste and making sure that you're not holding on to, say, stale inventory. Capture and manage information, especially on your customers. This is a very big topic in business these days. If you guys read the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Financial Times, whatever it may be, you hear a lot about this term big data, right? Big data is basically companies like Facebook, Google that get tons of information on who their customers are, so that then they could just make more money off them. They can sell them products that are targeted to them more specifically, or they can sell ads from companies that want to sell to that specific type of person, right? So you hear big data, usually that is the confine of a larger company that has a very big IT department or a very big R&D budget or something like that. But as a small business, you can still take advantage of just having more information on your customers. And the internet is like the best invention for that purpose. If you have a Facebook page, if you have a web page, basically you can get reports back that say who is going to your website, where are those referrals coming from, what pages on your website are they staying on the longest, which ones are they clicking off the most quickly, so that you can fix problems, you can try to enhance things that are strong and fix problems. You're also going to know who your customers are better. Using something like Facebook, if there are a certain number of people that are clicking, that are liking your page, your business page more often, where are they coming from? How are they getting referred? Who are these individuals? From Facebook, you're going to know, is this a male? Is this a female? Approximately how old are they? What types of networks do they have? That's valuable information because you can target your message much more effectively when you know who your customers are. So other reasons why it's useful, you can develop new ways of attracting customers and communicating with them. I mean, I think in particular for small businesses, being innovative in marketing, in marketing and sales is very important. And that's usually when you're not using lots of technology or you're not innovating new products. That's where the innovation happens, in actually how are you reaching out to your customers, how are you finding out about them, and then how are you capitalizing on that information. And then to improve internal processes, to reduce costs and waste, we're going to go into a couple techniques, like I said, some lean manufacturing, some Six Sigma a little bit later. Those are generally areas that being innovative, going through a brainstorming process to figure out how can you change a process that you currently use on a repetitive basis to reduce the amount of time that people spend on it and to reduce the amount of waste, or to substitute certain products that you use, certain inputs that you use for a lower cost one. When you're a small business, you usually have relatively small margins, or you're dealing with gross revenues that are pretty small. So even if you have big margins, that doesn't always pay all the rents. And so reducing costs is extremely important. And then to increase employee productivity, that's a fairly obvious one. If we have employees, or even if we don't, just to improve your own productivity, being innovative, usually just using new technologies, that is the way to increase productivity. There has been, throughout sort of human economic history, there have been like a few very large leaps in human productivity. The first would be the first industrial age, right? That was a huge change when we started to use coal and stuff, and coal engines, and I don't even really know the technology behind it, but apparently that was very big. And so you could get more economic output out of an individual when they were on a steam train than when they were on a donkey, apparently.
Internal combustion engine.
There you go. That I imagine that is the technology to which I am referring. So that's a big one. But within the last 10 to 15 years, there was also a very huge increase in productivity across. GDP increased per capita a great deal. What was the reason for that? Does anyone know? So the only way to generally, within economic theory, the only way to increase GDP productivity, like per capita, is through technology, is through the internal combustion engine, or in this case, the computer and the internet. The internet made it possible for one individual to do more work than they were doing earlier, because they don't have to get on the phone every 5 minutes and call their supplier or call their leads or whatever. They can write emails. They can write emails to more people than, more than one person. They're not handwriting notes and sending them through the mail or whatever. So the post office has come off worse for this, but the average company has improved as a result. You can get more productivity, more sales per person as a result. And to maintain advantages over competitors, I've sort of already discussed that. All right, we already discussed that. So here, we're going to try to keep this relatively short, but for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be going through a few techniques that we can use to try to bring an innovative perspective to our day in, day out existence as a business. I can't say that all of these are going to be valid for each and every one of you, but some of them should be. And some of them apply more to manufacturing and sort of automating of processes. But others are just about questions you should ask yourself so that you can think outside of the box, right? So we're talking about open innovation, mind mapping, brainstorming, continuous improvement, Six Sigma and Lean, lateral thinking, and value analysis, value engineering. Does anyone here have an engineering background? Mr. Stewart, do you have an engineering background? Mr. Race? Engineering background? Well, so if engineers deal a lot with stuff like this, especially value analysis and the Six Sigma and Lean. But again, it applies to many different industries. So open innovation. Open innovation is basically setting up a system where you're developing a tool, you're developing a technology that leverages other people's skills and innovations to your own benefit. Like one great example of this, again, to go back to the example I keep coming back to, is the smartphone. So there are two different types of smartphones out there. There are two different operating systems right now. What are they? There's the iPhone, and then what's the other one? Android. Those are the two big ones. And so how, like smartphones, why are they, what do we use on smartphones? We use them to call people, right? But we also use them to access the web, the internet. How do we do that? What are the actual things on here that we use to sort of interface apps, right? And so basically, Apple produces the operating system that sort of governs how it works, but they only produce a few of the apps that are on here. They basically incentivize other companies to do some of the work that makes this a more useful tool, that makes this a more valuable tool to me. Now, there's a difference, though, between the way that Apple does it with the iPhone and the Android does it, or Google does it with the Android. Do people know the differences? Anything about that? So Steve Jobs and Apple, notoriously kind of controlling, right? They want to make sure that this is a sleek, efficient, beautiful piece of machinery, right? And they don't want it cluttered up with whatever. So they police, to a certain degree, who can actually put apps on an iPhone. They have very strict protocol, and a lot of stuff they will not allow on here because they don't think that it's pretty enough, or they don't think it's useful enough, or whatever it is. Android, on the other hand, they're much more sort of open up the floodgates. How, we'll show you how this thing works. We'll show you the wiring, and then you just sort of put in whatever app you want, and then we'll let the market decide. So those are two different approaches, right? There's a sort of controlled approach, and then there's the wild and crazy approach, right? Which one is better? It'll sort of depend on who you talk about or who you talk to. At some point, the Android had a considerable number more apps than you would find for the iPhone, but the iPhone actually was making more money off of their apps because they had a tighter control on which ones they were, on the pricing and all that stuff, and so they were able to sort of get some rents off of those. But in terms of if your goal is just to sort of create a device that is the greatest innovative engine, maybe the Android approach is better rather than the Apple. The Apple probably, they just want to make money, right? Which is what a business is supposed to do. Any other examples of platforms that are sort of open? There's a big one that was developed, and it's, again, web-based, probably in the early 2000s, where basically it's like people come in and contribute their information. Facebook is that's one, but that's more that's social networking. Something that starts with a W. Wikipedia, right? So the term wiki refers to having a system where you just create the platform and then other people contribute their ideas or whatever. So Wikipedia is an encyclopedia that is governed by certain people, right? Like the Apple people, but they're Wikipedia people that sort of govern, does this apply, does that not apply? But you can show up and say, well, I think this is an important piece of information about Napoleon or about the Declaration of Independence or whatever you think you have some expertise on, and you create a sort of a valuable piece of information for the world to consume, right? All right, so that's open innovation. All right, mind map. So open innovation is basically an approach you can use to try to leverage other people's ideas, right? Mind mapping is more of a technique that all of us can use to try to help us think outside of the box. Now, when people say think outside of the box, why is that why do we usually think inside of the box? Why would we even need something, a tool, to help us think differently about something?
We're set in our ways of doing things the way it's always been done.
Right. And there's a psychological, there's a neurological component of that, right? That as we grow up, as we learn things, you know, there's like a call and response, right? We do something every day, our brain functions a certain way to certain stimulus, and our response is predictable. We do this thing. That sort of wears grooves, neural pathways in your brain. So when you see something, there's a certain stimulus, you're going to say, okay, I'm thirsty. I'm going to go, you know, get water from this thing, instead of saying, well, you know, I have, there's another place I could get water. Or, you know, that's sort of a silly example, but exactly, right. And it's much closer, but I just never think of it because I always do it this way. So we need some tools sometimes to like prime the pump, basically to get us thinking outside of the box. And that's a cliche, but that is a way of thinking of it. And so one of these tools would be mind mapping. Now here, the mind mapping here, it basically says in the middle, you know, what are innovation tools? And so basically the way mind mapping is you start on a concept and then you riff off of that concept. And sometimes you get far away from that concept, but it should still be related, right? And so you're thinking about something from a different perspective. Now, this isn't exactly innovative, but you know, innovative in terms of like a new product or something, but this is a tool that is commonly used when you're naming things. You know, when you want to come up with a name that conjures up an idea but isn't directly related to it. And so, not to say that I've experienced this or been present at it, but you can imagine, say, at an automotive company, what is it, the Tahoe, right? The Tahoe is that Chevy? Is that GM? Yes. Chevy GM, right? So you can imagine, you know, like them in their little meeting room or whatever, going through, okay, how do they come to the name Tahoe? Let's say that they start in the middle right there and they say, you know, what do we really want to communicate about this car? What would they really want to be communicating about that car? So it's a big SUV truck, right? So they're probably not hauling loads necessarily, but maybe they want the ability to like haul a load or to put a trailer on the back. It's for family, right? So they want something that's dependable, but also very rugged, right? Something that can survive a few bumps and dings here and there. So they put, you know, reliable and rugged in there, and so they say, well, it's reliable. You know, it can take you to your vacation home or whatever. It can take you to the mountains, to the lakes. So they're thinking lakes, okay, lakes. You know, what are names of lakes that are out there? There's Lake Titicaca, there's Lake Michigan, there's Lake Tahoe, right? And they get to just that word Tahoe, which doesn't itself scream dependability and ruggedness, but you can see a couple orders of connection back to those ideas, right? And so sometimes that is a way of getting to something through an indirect manner by using a tool like this. And mind mapping, basically what it is brainstorming, right? It's brainstorming ideas off of a certain concept or question. So brainstorming is a process of coming up with a high volume ideas, prioritizing them based on problem or business need, implementing suggested improvements. Everyone here has done brainstorming in one way or another. You do, you know, a list of things to do. That's brainstorming, you know, what do I have to do today? It's just sort of throwing stuff up there. Sometimes brainstorming can be highly organized, where you give a group of people 10, 15 minutes and you say, give me your best ideas for, I will use our own example of, you know, for the Small Business Development Center, for UTPA to reach out to more new businesses, right? Let's say, you know, well, we go to all the banks and we talk to all the bankers. That would be a reasonable idea. Another, maybe a bad idea would be let's hire a plane and let's have the plane, you know, trail one of those signs and we'll fly it around all day and it'll cost thousands and thousands of dollars. An important thing about brainstorming is that however silly that idea is, you can't shush the person. You can't push them down. You can't say that's a bad idea, at least in the beginning, right? It's important that it's an open, non-judgmental environment so that these ideas get put out there, because some of the best ideas come from sort of silly places in the beginning, and then you refine them, you change them somewhat, and they end up being extremely useful. Another point about this, about brainstorming and about putting yourself in a place where you can develop new neural pathways to get from point A to point B, is you a lot of times have to take yourself out of the environment that you are in a day in, day out basis, right? So you're probably not going to come up with new innovative ideas if you're sitting at the same table, looking at the same computer screen, talking about the same stuff that you do on a normal basis. So how do companies address that? Companies that have resources, at least. Retreats. You see these retreats where people will sort of go to they'll get a hotel room, or they'll go to the beach, or they'll do whatever they are, go to whatever sort of nice place just to get people out of their day in, day out environment so that they have mental freedom to think a little bit differently. So another tool we can use to basically try to, now this is going to be a bit more specific than just brainstorming, right? This is an actual tool you apply to a question, to an issue, to a product that you have with your business. It's the scamper technique. So as basically these are questions that you are going to ask about your product or service to try to improve it. Now again, just like brainstorming, there's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to be throwing up against the wall. Not all of it's going to be good, but some of it might be, right? And so that's what we're looking for. So with a given product, you want to be able to substitute something of it, basically change one aspect of it for another. Combine it with something else to maybe create something new, a new product, a new service, whatever it might be. Adapt something to it, modify or magnify it, put it to other uses, put it to a use that it's currently not being used for, eliminate something about it, or reverse or rearrange something. Now, the product I was going to use to sort of show how this might work is a bottle of water. We have bottles of water right here. This happens to be a beautiful bottle of Aquafina, right? And I believe it came out of the municipal water supply somewhere. But yet we pay $1.25 for it. It's beautiful. Beautiful product. So this seems like a fairly utilitarian, pretty simple product, but just by sort of applying some of these questions and some of these thought process to this product, maybe we can change it. Maybe we can make it better. Maybe we can sell it for more money and make more money off of it. Now, okay, if we are going to substitute one thing for another, how could we substitute? Let's focus on the materials. How could we substitute a different material for something that's used here to maybe make it better or make it more useful or something like that?
Colored plastic.
Colored plastic. Now, how would that be better?
We're going green.
We're going green. So if you actually colored this green, you could match the color with the sort of movement that you're trying to latch onto. Absolutely. What if we change, I don't know what kind of plastic this is. I'm not in the plastics industry, shockingly. What if we actually made this out of metal, right? And then it's not disposable anymore, and you get to reuse it every day, and you can fill it up. Now, that might not be a really good business model, because people then, they only buy one, right? And then they fill it up in the cooler in their office. But that's sort of, well, what if we substitute a different sort of plastic that isn't as expensive, right? That's the kind of substituting that we're talking about.
I think you can see that in action when you go to the supermarket. You see water with flavors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're actually going to talk about that. So combine, right? The second one, combine. Combine it with something else. Now, what's the purpose of this? Why do I purchase this bottle of water? To hydrate, right? So hydrate's something that every human has to do. It's just a matter of how they're going to do it, right? So that's something people have to do every single day. What else, in order to keep myself alive, what else do I need to be doing? You can't just live on water alone, right? You need some nutrients, right? So what if just by opening up the top, you could basically put some type of vitamin packet or some nutrient packet that every time that you're opening it, it's dropping those nutrients into the water, and maybe it makes it taste really better. Usually those vitamins tend to taste better. Maybe it's Flintstone vitamins. It tastes a little bit better, and you're opening it every time, and it tastes really good, and it's still water or whatever. You're basically combining it with vitamins to basically make it almost an entirely new product. Now you have nutrition water, right? I've heard there's a product out there called vitamin water. I don't know if there's already vitamins in there or what they do with that. It just tastes like Gatorade to me. But that's the sort of approach that we're going to be taking to that. Let's say put it to other uses, right? So currently, like we said, we need this water because we need to hydrate. What else could we possibly use this for? This bottle of water. Just the way it is currently. What could we do with it?
Tell you what my wife does with it.
What does she do?
She freezes it, puts it in the lunch bucket.
That's brilliant. And so it's keeping everything else cold. That's awesome. That's a great example. And so then you could maybe engineer this a little bit better so that it holds its temperature better when it's frozen, or it melts exactly by 12 o'clock or something like that, right? That's a great thing. Even right now, another use, and this is really silly, it's a paperweight. You don't have to change anything about it to actually make it a paperweight, but whatever. That's not neither here nor there. There's another product where you have bottles of water that I think they have little handles, right? So if you fill it all the way, you probably need something bigger than this. They become sort of exercise weights. Those little 2.5 pound weights that are more for lean than trim.
I saw one at some at the Academy the other day. They got little hooks so you can hook them on the fence when you go to the sporting events.
Really?
Yeah, what the heck is that?
That's really smart.
They put on the, it's one of these, okay?
Right.
But they put a little hook on there and you can hook it on the fence.
That's really, really smart. Right, and so, I mean, you can just by going to the grocery store, you can see how much thinking has already happened like this, right? Just for something as simple as water, right? Whereas 25 years ago, you didn't see water at the grocery store. You saw distilled water for, my mom and my grandma that were, ironing clothes to put in the iron, and that's like it.
But it became in gallons, and then somebody goes, oh, if I made it small, I'd carry it.
Exactly, right? There's just a lot of thinking just on this has happened fairly recently in the fast few.
I've seen flowers made with it.
Flowers.
They cut out just the top part,
Just the top of here.
and then they cut out the little petals.
And so like for like decorative.
Yeah, for decorative.
So that's like another use of it, right? So you could possibly manufacture this so that it has maybe semi-perforated petals here so that it very easily converts to a flower afterwards or something like that, right? And that the basic idea is either more people are going to want it as a result, or you've basically created a new product for yourself and a new income, a new revenue stream that you're going to focus on young girls from 12 to 18. I sound like a mercenary now, but that's kind of how we're thinking about it, right? You basically have created a new product of yourself just out of your own mind.
The germaphobe side of me says make it healthy. Well, not healthy, but safer.
Safer, right? So how could we do that? Basically, how could we adapt? How could we adapt or substitute? Let's say using the scamper technique, one of the material. This plastic. Is there like a sort of?
Ultraviolet, safe, or maybe make it darker, or
Does that make it better when it's darker?
well, maybe where when you open it and you take a swig at it, and then now if it gets warm, bacteria is gonna
Right.
multiply.
Maybe there's like antimicrobial materials that basically we can just put around the lip so that if multiple people are drinking from it, things I don't generally do, but absolutely. I mean, that is
Get together with Purell or something and see.
for sure. And if you can brand it along with Purell, again, that's even better because people love their Purell. Now, how about this? Now, that's like making a new product, right? That's like a new product line. You're talking about new revenue streams. But as we said, there are different reasons to sort of innovate on this. If what we want to do is reduce costs on this, there are ways to do that as well. And clearly, forget if it's Pepsi or Coke that actually produces this, but they've made this a product that is pretty cheap to produce because it costs so little. But if they want to take the next step, what could we eliminate about this? We have a bottle. We need a bottle because it holds the water, right? We need a top because otherwise the top is going to fall off, or excuse me, the water is going to come out. What else is on here?
Well, if technology was to level, you could get rid of that wrapper.
The wrapper, exactly. And then, so what utility does the wrapper serve right now? What is it doing?
Just advertising.
Advertising, and it also has to communicate certain vital information on the back, the nutrition stuff. But so what could we do to eliminate that?
You'd have to print it on the plastic.
Print it directly onto the bottle. And I mean, clearly I'm no manufacturing expert, but maybe that is possible, right? Maybe one of the issues here is that the ribbing won't allow that. What's the ribbing here for? Strength. It's also for tactile, right? So that your fingers can actually grab onto it. But usually when people are grabbing onto it, they're grabbing the bottom. They're not grabbing the top. So maybe it's possible, and this might reduce costs again and make it a more profitable product for us. You eliminate the ribbing around the top part, and that's where you directly print on all the required label information. So basically, you're going through this process. You are asking questions. Can I substitute something about this? Can I eliminate something? Can I modify or magnify it? Magnifying it would be, what, if I just made this bigger, right? This is like 16 ounces. If I made it 25 ounces, does that make it a new product? It basically does. It means that someone needs more water, right? And clearly water companies have figured that out because you have various sizes of water. Putting it to other uses, eliminating something, combining it with something else, also very, very important. But this scamper technique, I think, is an important thing. It's not just for products, too. You can use a scamper technique for your sales, right? For your sales process. You think about a company like McDonald's, right? McDonald's was, I believe, they might not have been, but they were at least one of the first fast food restaurants that sort of revolutionized the way that food was delivered. Before, it was at these sort of restaurant style where you had a waiter and they took your order and you sat down and you paid at the end, right? McDonald's changed that. They eliminated the need for waiters and waitresses where you are paying up front. There are people behind the desk and you pick up your food and you service yourself. So they eliminated that need itself. They also changed the model somewhat, combined it with something else, because do people know the way that McDonald's works? McDonald's is a franchise, right? So what are they selling? What do they sell? They basically sell an operations guideline and a logo. And they basically say, you can use the McDonald's logo. Here is how you make money, right? Do everything that's in this book. And then they're in the real estate business. Because that's like where all the value in their company is basically having this really, really cool, it's really like strategically located places. And that's a different way of running a food business, right? Who would have thought that all the value in a food business is actually in the real estate? So you can sort of use that for your own purposes if you are a salesperson, if you're selling medical billing software or whatever. How can you combine, let's say that you are selling this particular software package. Can you add something else to it to sort of increase the value that the customer gets without necessarily adding to your cost too much, right? Because that's really what you're doing, is you're dealing with perceived value. What can you add to what you're selling to increase the perceived value on behalf of the customer or on their part? All right, so that is one sort of technique of questions you can ask of yourself for a process or a product that you're selling. Now, continuous improvement is something that is very important for businesses that basically have any process that happens again and again and again and again. Now, the industries that are most identified with these types of processes for actually innovating are manufacturing companies. Now, why would that be? Because they make the same product over and over and over and over again, and any sort of improvements they can make to that process of manufacturing their product means more money for them, or lower costs, or lower prices, or greater market share, or whatever it is. But we all do something over and over again, right? So let's say for VBOC or for Small Business Development Center, they basically see clients day in, day out, and they help them with certain things. They help them start a new business, expand an existing business, either through improved marketing or by getting a loan or by creating a business plan or something like that. But they do it again and again and again. And so what they want to do is they want to measure how well are they doing that one thing, right? And then how, basically, once you measure it, once you get a metric and you pay attention to it and you measure it over time, then you want to take steps to actually improve what's going on, right? And so as long as there's something that you can say, I do this all the time, even if it's just answering the phones. How long do you stay on the phone with your clients? How quickly is it between when someone calls you and they get a call back, right? The metric would be that amount of time. You want to make that time as short as possible because people feel like they're being paid attention to and they're being serviced, right? And that's the goal. So there are different ways of looking at this. Sometimes even just paying attention to it and creating these metrics, that's enough. Other times you have to bring a bit more systematic approach to it. So these systematic approaches, two of them. One is Six Sigma. Six Sigma, I think, was created initially by Motorola. Then it was popularized at General Electric in the late 80s or 90s or early 90s, particularly through Jack Welch. And there's a whole, people that are in operations and logistics, there's so many of them these days have Six Sigma something. They have black belts, green belts, purple belts, rainbow belts, whatever it might be, but There's a whole industry around people getting certified in Six Sigma. And what Six Sigma means, believe Sigma refers to standard deviations from a mean. And so if you're manufacturing something, again, going back to manufacturing, you want to make sure that things are coming out to spec, that you want the bottle of water to look like this, right? If it comes out and it's got a big apple bottom like that or whatever, then it's not to spec, right? So how many standard deviations away from the mean is it? And this is a process, apparently, that if you implement it correctly, you're supposed to make sure that there aren't as many mistakes, right? That 99 point whatever percent of the time, you're doing it the way you want to be doing it. And so through Six Sigma, you're defining what the issue is, right? So going back to the Small Business Development Center, or VBOC, what they want to define here is how well are their clients doing, right? What impact do their services have on small businesses and entrepreneurs in Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, right? Then you want to measure it. How do you measure how well a client's doing? You want to see if they wanted to start up a business, have they started up? One way to measure that, you get the Secretary of State, filing piece of paper or whatever. That would be one way of measuring that, right? Now, other measurements of it would be how much time did you spend with that client, face to face? How much time did you spend working on their stuff, on their business plan? And those are metrics. A lot of times you will hear that, especially in manufacturing and technology. They'll call those key performance indicators, right? And you will have operation managers they call them dashboards, KPI dashboards that are on their computers that they constantly see what these metrics are and how they're performing on these. Because if performance is going down, you want to know very quickly so you can step in and make a change, right? And again, this is on stuff that you do over and over and over again. So define, measure, analyze, right? You want to know what are the relationships between what your goal is and then what these key performance indicators are. If you spend more face-to-face time with a client, I believe there's a correlation to their eventual success, right? So the more time you spend with a client, the more likely they are to start up or expand, right? And so you want to understand those relationships for your business, how the indicators change and then how that affects, the ultimate goal. And then, of course, you want to sort of implement improvements so that you are moving closer to your end goal by sort of a change in those metrics, by spending more time with clients, right? We realize there is now a connection between face-to-face time with the client and business startups. So spend more time with clients, right? I mean, this sounds like, oh, we're talking about complex stuff. Just do this thing more, right? Just do the thing that leads to success more often, and then control for it over time. You don't just do it once. You don't just give a person a pat on the butt and say, spend more time with them. You measure it month in, month out, and you make sure that you are getting closer to whatever the mean is, whatever the sort of ideal outcome for those processes are. That's what Six Sigma is essentially about. I'm sure that there are people who have these black belts that would take me to school on this. This is an absolute distillation of it. It's not in its fullest form. The other process that is, again, this is mostly manufacturing. People have heard of lean manufacturing before. It's sort of a buzzword. People use it a lot. And the basic idea is with lean manufacturing that you want to eliminate waste. Waste is bad. We all know that. But especially for small businesses where, again, either your margins are small or your margins are big, but your revenues aren't big enough to really sort of get you enough money to sort of pay the bills a lot of times. Eliminating waste is extremely important. So in a lean manufacturing operation, they are trying to eliminate waste in these ways. So they have seven different types of waste that they're trying to focus on in their processes to improve whatever their product or service is and to reduce costs and waste overall. So waiting, over-processing, reworking, movement, inventory, transportation, overproduction. What's waiting? So in a business, why is waiting bad? Or how is waiting bad? Philip.
You're sitting on product.
I mean, if basically waiting means unless it's yourself and you're not paying yourself a salary, you're paying someone to do nothing. You're paying them either minimum wage or hopefully more than minimum wage to sit on their keisters and surf the internet. Right? And that is a good way to just waste money. You're burning money. You're throwing it out. So you want to, let's say that someone is waiting on a shipment, right? On a shipment of goods to then process it, or maybe you're Chuck, maybe you are actually waiting on a person to show up because you need to make sure that they're putting their plane away or whatever. If there's a technology that you can implement that improves communication with the supplier, with the with UPS or with the client, to say, you know, I'm tracking where that person is, where the shipment is, so that I can basically have my worker show up exactly at the right time. That would be a way to eliminate that waste. I mean, some of these are pretty self-explanatory. You don't want to over-process something. You want to sort of, one of the basic ideas about logistics, right, is you only want to really touch something once. You want to basically bring it in a streamlined way to where, you know, to its ultimate goal. And so part of that is this inventory. Inventory, and this is a big thing. People that actually manage inventory or handle inventory, this is like a whole science of having only the amount of inventory that you actually need and having it sit on the shelves for as little time as possible, right? And so there's lots of technology out there right now that is designed to help people maximize the return they get on their inventory, because inventory is cash, right? That is actual cash that basically you have converted into a block of something that has potential, you know, earnings down the line, but as long as it's sitting on the shelf, it's nothing other than dollar bills you have put in a form that you can't use anymore, right? And so you want to shorten the amount of time that it's sitting there so that you are converting assets into cash that you can use for whatever purpose. Because if inventory is just going to sit on the shelf for a while, you might as well invest that in some financial vehicle that is actually going to be earning you something, a money market account, whatever it might be, right?
It's also called like just-in-time manufacturing.
Just-in-time inventory is a very big part of this, right? And again, that goes back to sort of different sort of communicating techniques and technologies have really sort of pushed this along the way. One of the real innovators in this is Walmart, right? You go to Walmart and you see plus stuff all over the place, and sometimes I think, you know, it kind of looks like, you know, like a mess. There's a very finely tuned machine behind all of that makes sure that they have the products that they need at the right time. And
automobile industry is a stellar example of that.
Absolutely. I mean, the logistics stuff in automobile industry where parts are made from all over the place and they arrive to plants almost exactly when they're needed. Toyota is a really big innovator in that with their Kanban system and lean manufacturing. It's very, very impressive. But again, this doesn't just have to be for manufacturers. If you do anything in a repetitive way that involves any of these processes, you know, you can apply lean manufacturing techniques to your business, right? If you are sitting around waiting for clients to walk in the front door, what else can you or one of your employees be doing during that time to be either making money for you, making sales calls, or reducing costs, or serving some other purpose that can, again, add value for your clients. Now, lateral thinking, again, so we're sort of jumping around. Those last two are actual techniques within manufacturing to reduce waste, to reduce costs. Scamper was a sort of a framework of questions you can ask to any product, any process that you use to try to improve it and innovate on it. Lateral thinking is much more of if you take a step back and you realize you want to do some brainstorming, some scampering of your product or whatever with your employees or colleagues or whatever it is, how can you get out of your current way of doing things to think outside of the box? Now, ultimately, what you want to be doing is lateral thinking. Lateral thinking it differs from vertical or linear thinking, where, you know, I am thirsty. I've always gone to that water fountain over there, even though there's a closer or easier or cheaper place to do it nearby. You want to put yourself in a position where you can think about things differently, right? Now, there are some examples. Sometimes riddles help people think a little differently about certain situations. This is a bit macabre, but this is like a riddle that a lot of people have heard. There's a gentleman who unfortunately has decided to sort of cut his life short, and he's hung himself in a room. And you come in, and right here you find him hanging from the ceiling from a noose, and there's nothing. He's about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. There's nothing but a puddle of water on the ground. And so a way of getting someone to think about about outside of the box is to present this riddle to him or her and say, what happened? Does anyone here know the answer to this riddle? Mr. Stewart? A block of ice, right? So this person brought in a block of ice, and basically because they didn't want to kick a chair out or whatever, but this thing's going to melt because it's 85 degrees in the room or whatever it is. It's going to melt at a certain point, and at that point, the noose is taut. It's, again, macabre, but it's that type of thinking of putting a situation and what are different answers to this riddle, right? It's used a lot apparently in crime solving, right? You have to think of what are different sequences of actions that have happened to lead to this result, right? And hopefully what you're doing when you're answering these might seem silly and fun or whatever, is you are trying to break the existing neural pathways that you use on a day in, day out basis so that when you get to the business problems, you've primed the pump. Again, another example that I'll use, and this is a real life example that actually happened to me. I thought we had a gas leak in my home because every time we have a couple cupboards that are down here. Every time I would open them up, I get a whiff and it smells like gas. The only thing in here are there's like, because it's wood, it's like a few wood shavings and there's some pots and pans, right? And so the linear way of addressing this is to do what? Call a gas company, right? Which, of course, we had to do that because you have to be safe or whatever. But I had sort of a hunch in the back of my head that I think it might be something else because I didn't think there was a gas line around there. But I don't really know the house we rent, et cetera, et cetera. It turns out in the end, when the gas guy came, my hunch was correct because of the evidence that was presented. So in this cupboard, there was no gas line, there were some wood shavings, and there were some pots and pans. What are possible answers for why it smells like gas when you open it?
Wood stain?
So the wood shavings were actually from termites. And one of the when termites, I don't know, they just eat the wood. One of the things that they put off is methane. And because basically I was only smelling the gas when I would open it up, it would store all the methane and then it would just release it once when I opened up the thing. So it smelled like gas right then and there. So instead of a sort of gas leak, we actually had a termite problem, which is not one of those good things to have, but at least we got the appropriate solution. But you want to be able to think differently about these problems that present themselves. Now another manufacturing type system that we can bring to bear on our businesses, right? When you sell a product or service and you want to really think about, okay, how can I reduce costs or increase value? Again, those are two things that we're focusing on here on the innovation side. So value analysis, value engineering, right? Let's talk about automobiles. I don't know, I'm not a gearhead or anything like that, but I like nice cars, of course. Let's say that you have a Volkswagen. It's like a $24,000 Volkswagen. What's that? That's a Jetta or a Passat or something? Yeah. Now, it's worth $24,000. Then you basically itemize the costs, and it costs whatever it costs. Let's say it costs $22,000 to actually make it, or $20,000, right? All the costs of actually making the thing. Now, what in here do people care about? What do they value about the car that you're selling them, right? So in a car, what do we value? What do we really care about? The experience of driving a car. Reliability. So you want the engine to work consistently. It doesn't need tons of upkeep or anything like that. What else? Comfort. You want it to be comfortable. Absolutely. What? Yeah. Gas. You want it to be fuel efficient because that reduces cost for you. All those things. Safe. Absolutely. You want it to be safe. You want it to have the right airbags. You want it to be sturdy and all those things. But in terms of paying for things, people also care about kind of not silly, but more sort of creature comforty things, right? The comfort thing, people want like leather, right? They want leather seats. They say this about women a lot. I don't know if it's women and dudes as well, but cup holders, right? Cup holders apparently really, really matter in cars, and people choose cars apparently sometimes on cup holders. So if you go down the itemized list of what costs what, and you say, well, okay, we're using this type of leather for the seats, right? And people really value that. can we make a little bit of change and like increase the quality of the material, but it really increases the perception of value that people are getting from this thing that you sell. And maybe you can sell it for more money as a result, right? And likewise, we talked about safety and reliability and all that, but maybe there's something under the hood or beneath the chassis or something that doesn't affect safety too much or reliability that is currently made out of carbon fiber or some sort of polymer, something that's expensive that then you can maybe substitute for something that's a little bit lighter so you get better gas mileage, or it's just cheaper for us, right? And it doesn't affect the overall perception of value in the customer, right? So to go back to this bottle of water, right? What do people really care about this? They care about the water, right? In this thing, right? Because there's no vitamins in here, there's no coloring. Maybe they care about it if it's green. I don't know that it's green. They care about the water. So maybe we can make it a little bit more cost effective to do this. We can replace the label and just print directly on there because it's not affecting the water. That's what people really get the value out of it for. And so whatever we sell, right, if it's a service, if it's a product, what elements of it can we substitute maybe for something cheaper or for something that's better and maybe either reduce the cost for ourselves or sell it for a higher price premium. Now to get back to the car, how this applies, you guys know this whole thing between Volkswagens and Audis. Apparently they sit on the exact same car frame, right? They're sort of, okay, so they're basically, from what I understand, again, not being a huge car enthusiast, that they're largely the same car. Audis retail for $20,000 more, almost like on a model-to-model basis, than Volkswagens because of these things that people that want sort of elitist, not elitist, but higher performance cars, they want this leather. They want it to look beautiful and futuristic and have those LED lights on the front and things that, if really what you want is a dependable car that gets from point A to point B, that gets good gas mileage, the value of a Volkswagen to an Audi might be the same. But when you care about these sort of premium elements, you can really charge $20,000 more, right? So go back to that value engineering. I'm sure they did a decent amount of that to get to these sort of higher end Audi cars. All right, we don't have access to the internet, but I would really encourage everyone, honestly, this is a really cool thing when you guys get back home. Go to YouTube and Google IDEO, I-D-E-O in all caps. And there's a Nightline thing from like 1995. It's a really, really cool video about how they use many of these techniques to develop new products. And the product that they work on is a new shopping cart. And really how they go, basically what they do, they are a product design company. And they have people from totally different backgrounds, brainstorming, mind mapping, all that stuff to come to a new form of a shopping cart. And I don't think the shopping cart has really taken off or anything because I haven't seen it anywhere. But it's a really neat process and it's really cool. It's short, it's like 5 minutes. It's really cool how they get from point A to point B using a lot of these techniques. And again, none of us are really going to achieve what they're doing. But if we can take elements of it and apply it to what we do on a day in, day out basis, there's going to be some improvements, right? And that's what this is about. It's not monumental. Again, it doesn't have to be the revolutionary change. We're not going to, revolutionize the insurance industry probably tomorrow, but we can maybe marginally improve what we're doing by using some of these techniques. And that's really the lesson. So, in summary, innovation and technology management, a way of generating new products, processes, services for your business, having a formal process for being creative and innovating. It's an important thing for all of us. And it's possible to use these techniques even if they weren't conceived in the same industry that we work. It's possible to apply them to what we do. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming and any questions?
All right, this next module we're going to talk about is logistics, purchasing, and inventory management. Just some introductions. We're going to introduce each one of those topics and define them. You're going to understand the role played by the purchasing manager within the organization, knowledge of how the inventory impacts operations, to understand the roles of logistics within the organization, and the different modes of transportation for logistics. Basically, this is a brief definition or a general definition of logistics, and logistics is part of the supply chain management that plans, implements, and controls the effective and efficient forward and reverse flow of the storage of goods, services, and related information between points of origin and the point of consumption in order to meet consumer requirements. The way I look at this is logistics really talks about the transportation of certain goods, and it can work both forwards and reverse. Think about it, if you buy a good from a supplier and you put it in your retail store and then you sell it to the consumer, but also how we talked about consumer management earlier. Consumer management is like you take the information from the consumer, you use it, and maybe there's something that you can improve with that product that you communicate back to the supplier. So it can work both ways. This is just a brief demonstration of a logistics supply chain for a manufacturing company. And here we have an activity, but we're just going to discuss it a little bit. Most manufacturing companies will get a product from the supplier in the form of raw materials. It'll go to your factory. Then your factory is going to produce it and make a finished product out of it. You're going to then give it to a distributor who will then give it to a retailer. The way an example I like to use is Walmart or a retail store. Basically, the retail store gets supplies from the supplier. They take it to their store. They then sell it to the customer. Now, maybe there's a defect, and the customer finds the defect and relates it back to you, and in turn, you relay it back to the supplier. So it works both ways. Some importance of logistics, and these are different factors that you need to consider when you think about, shipping goods, supplies to you, as well as you shipping your supply to the customer, is the reduction in economic regulations. Basically, this is a relaxation of controls of the carrier rates. How much does it cost? You've seen an increase in transporting or getting supplies via truck. Well, maybe you, in turn, get your product from yourself to the customer via truck. So you're concerned about the rates. What's the economic effect? Changes in consumer behavior, shifts in consumer activities. Who buys a product? Is it the wife's job to buy the product, or is the male person's job to buy the product? And you'll see this, sometimes with food, with hair care products, different things like that. So you need to keep those things in mind when you think about logistics, when you're talking about shipping things to your customer. And also you need to think about these things when it's your role to buy them from a supplier. So it's like if I buy shampoo from the supplier, is it going to be cheaper for me to get it by airplane, by rail, or by a truck?
I guess Walmart's one of the examples where they cut the most cost was in
right. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Another thing to consider is technological advances. Advances in computer hardware, software, and the internet. Cullen just got through talking about that. How the internet has changed things and how we get things done a lot quicker, and kind of cut out the mailman. So here you can actually talk to your supplier using the internet or email real quickly. You can order supplies real quickly. And another thing that you need to consider is the growing power of retailers. Retailers are getting more power because they're getting more product out to the individual. They're getting more power from the supplier because they can always use more than one supplier. And this goes into quantity, quality, and cost. I just came from a conference where they talked about the use of co-ops. Maybe in the city of McAllen, you found 3 people that buy the same kind of shampoo and distribute it. Well, maybe it's cheaper that if the 3 of y'all got together, created a co-op to where instead of buying 1,000 bottles of shampoo a piece, it's cheaper for y'all to buy 3,000 bottles of shampoo, and then y'all just distribute them among yourselves when you get back or when they arrive. Another important factor to consider is the globalization of trade. So much more product that we buy is global now. It's not just made in the United States. Products you'll see it made in Germany, made in Britain, made in China, things like that. So those are important considerations concerning logistics. Basically here we talk about the different modes of transportation, and you'll see that there was mainly 5 different types of modes, and the advantages, limitations, what it's best suited for, and what the price is. Here, air, with one of the advantages with air transportation is the fact of speed. It can be delivered overnight. You'll see this with FedEx, a lot of your letters. Well, there's a lot of other products that need to be there overnight. And so speed is a major factor here. Limitations, it's not able to deliver goods directly to customers. Yes and no. There's things that if you're willing to pay for it, they can deliver anything overnight. What's it best suited for? Something of a high value, low volume, perishables, and as we talked about price, it's expensive. We talk about rail. Rail is flexibility, capacity. Lots of times rail with cost, you'll see the cost is cheaper per tonnage. So it's best suited for low value, diverse, large volume. The price is real reasonable. I did hear a thing where it takes like 6 months to a year if you want to send something by rail. So you have to have a contract with the railroad companies. Truck, one of the advantages is it's flexible. It's not preferable for professional goods. It's reliable. That's kind of a sight to be seen. I mean, there's refrigeration trucks out there. So it's not just for things that are perishable. Some things have to be there overnight. Usually it's low cost and it concerns bulk items. Next we'll talk about ships and barges as a mode of transportation. Basically with ships and barges, an advantage is the capacity. You can move large items. You can move a large quantity of items. One of the limitations is not able to deliver goods directly to the customer. I mean, with waterways, ships and barges need waterways. They don't directly go to different parts of inland, but it is very inexpensive. Another one is pipelines. Pipelines deliver goods with speed. We talk about different types. Like most people are very common is gas pipelines or oil pipelines. You hear about those a lot, but other products are delivered by gas pipelines, not just petroleum. So one of the things here you'll see it's slow speed. It's inflexible in the routes. Basically, you build a pipeline, that's the only place it can go from point A to point B. It can't deviate and go somewhere else. What it's best suited for is bulk and liquefiable, and it's also very costly. You'll notice here at the bottom, this is something that's relatively new, is digital networks. And Here we talk about, some of the advantages are the cost and the speed. I mean, how many people buy products and just download? You can download books, you can download music, you can download software, things like that. So basically, whatever can be downloaded, and products can be very unlimited. What it's best suited for is electronic media, and usually it's very expensive because you don't have the other transportation costs involved. So this is just a logistics scenario, something to look over and think about. A company needs to transport 8,000 pounds of crayons from California to New York across the country. If a company decides to ship the 8,000 pounds at one time, which is the best mode of transportation if it's focused on cost? Railroad, because railroad deals with bulk and it's also very inexpensive, right? What is the best mode if it's focused on flexibility? Probably like a truck, because it deals with bulk and it also deals with flexibility to be able to go anywhere. What is the best mode if it's focused on speed? Aircraft. Aircraft, one of the things is it can transport bulk items, but it is very expensive. Here it doesn't mention the fact that we're concerned about the expense that it's going to cost. What's the best mode if it's focused on speed and cost?
Being in my business, I debate that with you.
It's just something to think about, really. It could be a lot of things. Talk about speed and cost, probably airplane. Speed and cost, you might be thinking about a truck. Hot shot, something like that. Oops. So these are activities in the logistics channel. Customer service, which we've talked about in a different module. Forecasting. I want to go over 3 basically that we're going to discuss here in the module. We've discussed logistics. We're going to discuss inventory management. And we're also going to talk about a little bit about procurement, which is also like pricing. So here we're going to talk about purchasing. And basically purchasing is securing the raw materials, component parts, and supplies brought from an outside organization to support a company's day-to-day operations. So that's basically what purchasing is. And some objectives for purchasing are obtaining goods and services of the required quantity and quality. Remember, these are objectives. Obtain goods and services at the lowest cost. And here part of the thing is to have more than one supplier. It's a big buzzword right now. Have more than one supplier. Have more than one customer. If somebody goes out of business for some unforeseen reason, then you have another place to get that product from. Who gives it to you at the lowest cost? Always keep that in the back of your mind.
It's diversity too. I mean, you don't want them all localized.
Right.
Because some hurricane will hit and they're all out of action.
Diversity is a big thing. Ensure the best possible service and prompt delivery by the supplier. Once again, this may go on to the fact that you're looking at the lowest cost, but it may be the lowest cost, but also the best service and the best delivery. Develop and maintaining good supplier relations and developing new suppliers. So keep a relationship with your supplier. That way, whether it's payables or things like that, make sure that you have a good, maybe the customer's only got 10,000 units left and you require 8,000 units and somebody else is requiring another 10,000 units, but you have a better relationship with that supplier. You may say, well, I'm going to fill your order first and whatever's left will ship to the other guy. And he's just going to have to wait because the items are on back ordered. But you have a better relationship with him, so keep that in mind. So this is just some ways to satisfy the purchasing objectives. Determine purchasing specifications. Make sure it's the right quantity, the right quality, and the right delivery. Here we kind of have this as the right time and place. You know, this is something that you want to maintain, is make sure that you're getting the product at the right time and the right place. Selecting suppliers is make sure it's the right source. Make sure it's a low cost. Make sure the delivery is right. You know, negotiate terms and conditions of purchase. Basically the right price. Make sure it's the right price that you're willing to pay for it. And issuing and administering purchase orders. I think this is a key objective, because one of the things that you want to do is you want to maintain control over your purchases. You can't just have a purchasing agent that's going to go off the deep end and purchase 10,000 units of your product when you only need 1,000 units of your product. So keep control of your purchasing orders. Make sure they go through the right channels, they're approved by the right people.
Especially if they have a shelf life.
Especially if they have a shelf. This is an example of the purchasing cycle. Receive and analyze purchasing requisitions. This is like, let's say that you have a warehouse or that you have any kind of operations, and your salesman says, well, we need 5,000 of this certain type of product to keep sales going. You know, you want to receive it and analyze a little bit. You're like, well, do we really need 5,000? There's a defective rate of 10%, so I'm gonna need maybe I need 6,000. That way, if I have to send 1,000 of them back because they're defective, I have 5,000. So analyze your requisitions. Select suppliers. Basically, we talked about having different suppliers. Have multiple suppliers. That way, if something does happen to one of them, that you have another way of getting that product that you need. Receive quotations. Make sure you have the best price. Analyze the quotations. Not only is it the price, but it's also the delivery. So the next step is to determine the correct price. Am I paying the right amount for this product? You know, is he charging too much for it? Is he not charging enough for it? Maybe if he's not charging enough for it, there's a quality issue. So think about things like that. Issue purchase orders. I talked a little bit about how important purchase orders are to your company. You know, make sure that they're out there. Make sure you track them. Follow up to ensure delivery dates are met. And when you purchase a product, you want to make sure it gets there on time. Maybe there is a problem with their delivery. Maybe you'll get a discount if he doesn't meet the delivery date. So you need to keep track of those things. Receive and accept the goods. Make sure that the goods are what you did order. Like Carlos was talking about the shoes, purple shoes. Make sure that all your shoes are the left and the right. They're not just all left shoes. Make sure you're getting what you ordered. And lots of times you'll have different people that will do this for you, but sometimes it's up to you to do it. Make sure you get what you ordered.
Sometimes people will go for a low bid and not pay attention to specifications like how it's going to be packaged.
Right, exactly.
5,000 units and it comes in one box.
Yeah,
It broke down by units of 10.
Exactly. The lowest cost is not always necessarily the best one. So expect what you received. Because once you received it, pretty much there's not a whole lot you can do about it, you know. Approve supplier's invoice for payment. This goes back into cash flow. Make sure that you are paying and that you are managing your payments right. So some purchasing challenges is the quality issues in purchasing. We talked about that. You know, how long is it gonna last? Things like that. Is it defective? Are you gonna have to send it back? You know, does this guy, that's something else to think about, is if one of your suppliers has a 10% deficiency rating, or, you know, basically you have to send back 10% of the items all the time, but he's only maybe 10 cents cheaper than your nearest supplier. You might look, well, my other supplier, I have to pay 10 more cents per unit for it, but he only has a 1% deficiency rate. So I only have to send back 100 shoes, or 100 units of product instead of 1,000 units of product. What are the shipping costs? You know, am I paying more for shipping the extra 1,000 units as compared to shipping the extra 100 units? Global purchasing. You know, we talked a little bit about this. You know, am I gonna buy a product from China? Am I gonna buy a product from the United States? Is it cheaper to buy in China? Is it cheaper to buy in the United States? Is the quality of the product from China the same quality as the product from the United States? So you need to take all those into consideration before you purchase an item. Basically, another challenge is investment recovery. What I'm buying, am I going to be able to sell it? You know, basically your inventory is an investment that you're making, that you're going to see a return on your investment. And social responsible purchasing. We talked about Colin talked about the water bottle earlier, and you know, part of it is it recyclable? You know, is the plastic recyclable? Things like that. Are people going to buy your product because it's more socially responsible? Next, we're going to talk about inventory management. And basically, inventory is the material and the goods that are maintained to satisfy the customer's demand. Inventory management is the science of managing of the stock of material goods through warehouse, transportation, and material handling. Basically, we classify inventory into these cycles. Into these divisions, and you'll see cycle or base stock inventory needed to cover the normal demand during an order cycle. Basically, I want to make sure that you understand that a cycle is not a business cycle. It's the inventory cycle. It's not a year. You could have an inventory cycle of 2 weeks. Basically, you cycle through all your inventory in 2 weeks, so you have to keep it going. And it's not monthly, it's not quarterly, it's not yearly. Here we have safety or buffer stock. And this is basically the stock that you're going to have in addition to your base stock to cover uncertainty in demand. I talked about customer service, how I get annoyed at the fact when I go to buy a product and they say we don't have it in inventory right now. You're going to have to wait 3 months for it. Well, maybe you just lost a customer that way. So you always want to have a little bit of buffer stock. Your pipeline or your transit stock that is en route between various fixed locations. And we talked earlier about logistics. You want to make sure, well, I have 1,000 units of product coming on Wednesday, you know, so I have 1,000 units that are en route, so I don't need to order another 1,000 units on Saturday because I'm getting low. So keep in mind the fact that you do have some units maybe en route. Speculative stock, inventory held for seasonal demand. Basically here, let's go back to the swim trunks issue. You know, it's sometimes that you carry the stock just because it may be in demand. And this is speculative stock. And the last one is psychic stock. And this one, I don't know a whole lot about. It's holding inventory in retail based on the theory that customers' purchases are stimulated by inventory that they can see. Think about when you go to a retail store, like a clothing store, you'll see the items on a mannequin. And so the fact that you see them on a mannequin, you may sell more of them. So you want to make sure that you have stock to make that sell. Because anytime that you do not have the stock, that's a sale that you've lost. I know what a lot of these places are getting to now is that, like, I'll use Dillard's for example. If you go to Dillard's and you want a certain size, say a certain size shirt, and they don't have it in stock, what they'll offer to do is order it for you, and what all they do is get online and order it. So I don't see what the difference is between them getting online and ordering it and you just ordering it and having it delivered to your house. So, some inventory cost, and this is associated with you having the product. Carrying cost, which is associated with holding inventory in a warehouse. And here's just an example. Carrying cost is a percentage that is multiplied times the value of the inventory. Here we use an example of 1,000 billion. I don't even think that's a real number. I think once you get to 1,000 billion, it's 1 trillion, right? Yeah. But here your carrying costs are maybe 25% of that. So your ordering cost. Your ordering costs associated with ordering inventory, such as order and setup costs. There's costs associated with the fact that you're going to order something. You have to have somebody to make the purchase. Maybe there's a cost per purchase, things like that. Stock out costs associated with running out of inventory. Basically, we talked about this, lost sales. You need to make sure you have enough inventory so that you don't lose sales. Item costs, price paid for purchased items. This includes the transportation, customs, duties, insurance, anything that you have to add to the cost of an item. And capacity associated costs, which is costs associated with changes in output levels requiring overtime, hiring, training, etc. So special concerns concerning the inventory is one thing you can do is ABC inventory analysis. And this is where you categorize the inventory based upon, how much should you carry. And A is one with the highest critical. And I mean, you may think, well, this is something that makes a purchase. This is something that I'm either going to provide good customer service with, or maybe bad customer service if I don't have it. And maybe it's a product that you never want to run out of. Another one is B, which is moderately, and C, which is items that are not essential, things that people can do without. Maybe something more of a substitute product, or a want or desire, kind of a byproduct. Another thing you need to concern yourself with is dead inventory, which is inventory that there is no longer any sales during a 12-month period. People have dead inventory all the time, and you'll see this where it's a product that people don't need anymore. Maybe innovation or technology has bypassed it and there's no need for it anymore, and you can't use it. It's just dead inventory. It's sitting there doing nothing but taking up space. You need to be concerned with inventory turnover. We talked about this in the accounting part, and basically inventory turnover is the number of times that inventory is sold in 1 year, in a 1 year period. Here we'll talk, one of the best things that you can do is two ways of thinking about things. Inventory turnover can be real high, meaning that you've ordered the item and you don't keep a whole lot in stock all the time, but you keep the customer happy. But then again, you have you have a cost associated with the fact that you're purchasing the product so much, your ordering cost. Or you're gonna buy a lot of product and then you figure, well, your ordering costs have gone down because you bought a lot of product and you don't have the ordering costs, but you might have the carrying cost. And so you have to take those into consideration when you consider inventory management. And also concern yourself with complementary and substitute products. Basically, complementary products are items that are sold together. Here we use an example of like a razor and razor blades. So, I mean, they go hand in hand with each other. But you don't have to sell the razor. I mean, once you buy the razor, you don't have to buy the razor again, you just buy the blades. But sooner or later, if you want, because technology has increased, if you want to look at the fact that I need a new razor or something like that, or you need to look at substitute products. And we kind of talked about that with the fact of, remember that example that we had with gelato and ice cream? Basically, it's not the same thing, but it's a substitute for one or the other. So, I mean, and usually if you don't have the inventory, maybe your customer is going to go somewhere else and buy one of your substitute product. So just in summary, logistics, purchasing, and inventory management, they're interrelated. Basically, all three of them kind of go together. Purchasing is a function within the organization that supports logistics by buying all the materials needed to be moved and stored during production. Inventory is the material that is moved and stored from point A to point B. Effectively managing the individual aspects leads to a much more cost-effective and efficient material management system. Okay, so next we're going to talk about tax issues. And what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about corporate income tax, franchise tax, sales and use tax, and other taxes that you're probably going to see when you own your own business. Basically here, corporate income taxes are imposed in the United States at the federal level, most states and some federal levels, and on the income of entities treated for taxation purposes as corporations. Remember, a corporation is also an entity. Federal tax rates on corporate taxable income vary from 15% all the way to 35%. You also have state and local taxes, and the rules vary by jurisdiction, though many are based on federal concepts and the definitions. So here are the different forms of businesses. There's basically 5 of them, and a significant impact on the way you are protected under the law in the form of the business entity you use. Each has its own benefits and drawbacks, and each is treated differently for legal and tax purposes. Basically, the 5 different types of business entities is the sole proprietorship, the partnership, the C corporation, the S corporation, and the limited liability company. First, let's talk a little bit about the sole proprietorship. It's basically created by the owner. There's one person involved, that's why it's called sole proprietor, and it's registered with the state. Okay, it's not registered with the state, usually it's registered with the county, and you can be protected by as many counties as you want. Sometimes you can say statewide. Basically, sole proprietor has to comply with local registration. This includes business licenses or permits or permit laws to make business legitimate. And when I say You know, you have to have businesses, licenses, or permits. Think about it like a food handling. Usually they're registered with the city. So, and then they have to pass certain permits to be able to handle food. And they have to go, the servers have to go through different classes. Basically, a sole proprietor can be held personally liable for any business-related obligations. Remember, like I talked about, if you get sued, they can come after your bank account. They can come after any investment property you have, things like that. Maybe if you have additional cars. And the taxation for sole proprietors are paid on their personal income tax at their own income tax rate. It's not a different rate, it's at the same rate. Any kind of business income for a sole proprietor is it's Schedule C that a person uses. Next, we'll talk a little bit about partnerships. They're usually created by agreements of more than one party. Partnership is a business owned by two or more people that haven't filed papers to become a corporation or a limited liability company. There's two basic types of partnerships. There's the general partnership and there's limited partnerships. Basically here, the thing to know is that a general partnership is legally responsible for anything that the partnership does. And if you're a general partnership, it could be one person could be liable for another person's obligations. A limited partnership, usually your only your only financial responsibility is the money that you have invested into the partnership. A limited partnership has to have a general partner, somebody who's responsible for more than what they put into the business. Partners are personally liable for all business debts and obligations, including court judgments, except limited partners. And the taxation is through what they call pass-through tax entity. Basically, in a partnership, the income gets passed through to the partner's income tax return. So they get taxed on their personal tax return, their 1040. And usually what a partnership has to do is file a 1065. And what the 1065 is more of an informational income tax return. And they report what the partner gets on what's called a Schedule K1. And then the individual partner has to put that on their individual tax return. Here we talk about partnership as a pass-through tax entity. Each partner pays pro rata share of income tax net on net profits, whether or not they are distributed. A little bit about self-employment tax here, and this goes back to also the sole proprietorship is basically partners must pay them with regular income taxes. Partners must pay twice as much on regular employees because employees' contributions are matched by their employers. And this goes back into what we talked about, payroll taxes. Payroll taxes, what I like to just generalize it and say payroll taxes are usually about 15%. Basically, the employee pays 7.5% and the company pays 7.5%. Here, since you're employed by yourself, you pay the whole 15%. Thing is, when you on your income tax return, if you look, there's a place where you can deduct half of your self-employment tax. So they give you a tax break on taxes. Next, we'll talk about the C Corporation. The C Corporation is a separate legal entity that can shield the owners from personal liability and company debt. Money can be raised easier via the sale of stocks. Its ownership can be transferred via the transfer of stocks. So here it goes back to one of the pros of a corporation is the fact that the ownership can be easily transferable. Tax advantage can be considerable. You're able to deduct many of your business expenses and also many of your healthcare programs. So they give you a little bit of tax advantage if you're a corporation. But next we'll talk about, but corporations, you get taxed, what's considered double taxation. Basically, the corporation pays income tax on the corporation's net profits. And then there's also that you also pay taxes on what's considered the dividends for your stocks. So some of the pros of a C corporation is it's one of the oldest and most successful, prestigious types of business entities out there today. It provides personal liability protection. Basically, all you can lose is just what you put into the company, nothing more than that. And it can reduce taxes, lower tax rates on retained profits, and you can deduct stuff like healthcare, travel, entertainment, and it has more avenues to funding. Some of the cons to the C corporation is it's more expensive to set up. There's more paperwork and formality required than the LLC. And double taxation for shareholders to receive dividends. So the next thing is the S corporation. And the S corporation is kind of a C corporation, but you designate it as an S corporation when you do your income tax returns. An S corporation is treated like a regular corporation with one exception. S corporations pay no income tax. Taxation is to be taxed like a partnership or a sole proprietorship. It has the same kind of pass-through formation that the partnerships and the sole proprietor does. So basically, when you have a S corporation, they have to, the income tax return that they file is more informative, and whatever net profit that they made throughout the year gets put on the partner's tax return or the member's tax return. So one of the pros is the prestige of the corporation without double taxation. And right here we have it's ideal for one-person corporation. We talked about a little bit about the limited liability company and also the S corporation. Both of these are ideal, kind of like toward the one person that's in charge. Some of the cons is it's more expensive to set up. There's more paperwork and formality. Requires that an LLC, formality than the LLC, which requires holding shareholder board meetings, keeping minutes and resolutions. Next, we'll talk about the limited liability company. Basically, it's a hybrid between a corporation and a partnership. It's easily managed, and it also is taxed through what they consider pass-through taxation. Members/owners of limited liability are limited to the amount of capital that they contributed. So basically, they get sued here and you have an LLC. Basically, the only thing that a person that sues you can come after is the amount of money that you have invested into LLC. The operating agreement is the document that sets the rules for operating the company, and membership interests are freely transferable. Yes, sir.
Can you clarify that? That says liability corporation. Is it a corporation or company?
It's company. Right. It's probably a typo. I didn't create this slideshow, so. But yeah, there's only one type of corporation. This is a limited liability company.
Thank you.
See, it says that again, corporation. Limited liability company, some of the pros is it provides the liability protection of a corporation without the corporate formalities. It's taxed the same as a sole proprietorship, one member LLC, or as a partnership, two members. Some of the cons, it's usually more expensive to form than a sole proprietorship. With a LLC, usually you have to go to the Secretary of State. You have to file all this documentation and everything. With a sole proprietorship, all you have to do usually is go to the courthouse. It requires more paperwork and formal behavior. What I like to tell people is when you form an LLC, usually what you have to do is you have to have a board meeting and minutes. And if you have just a one-member LLC, that could be as simple as you sitting down at your kitchen table and just having a meeting with yourself. It doesn't have to be any more formal than that, you know, but you do have to do it. With a corporation, there's articles of incorporation involved. And bylaws. This is just an example of some of the pros, cons of the sole proprietorship, the partnership, the corporation, and the S corporation. Let me just go over that briefly. Basically, the first one is the method of creation. And the sole proprietorship, we talked about, it's created by the owner. Partnership is created by just an agreement between more than one person. Corporation is usually it's created by the state, and it's chartered. It's issued by a charter, and the S corporation is also chartered. Liability. So for sole proprietors, there's unlimited liability, which means you can be sued. For partnerships, there's unlimited liability, which means you can get sued. Corporation is limited liability, which means you're only responsible for the amount that you've put in the corporation. And S corporation is kind of the same way. It's limited liability. You're only responsible for the debts and the liability of the corporation that you've put the money that you've invested in the corporation. Duration. For a sole proprietorship, it's usually up to the owner. How long is the owner going to last? I know we talked about a DBA with the county. I believe the DBA is only good for 10 years. And after that, you have to file another DBA. So you have to continually apply for that. Partnerships, kind of the same thing, but they're terminated by an agreement of the partners. If one partner wants to dissolve it and one partner wants to keep it going, there's different ways to, you might need to get a lawyer, an arbitrator, or somebody. There might be, like was talked about earlier, it's like, well, maybe if there's a tie and it's an odd year, then you have the right to say, and if it's an even year, you have the right to say so. Usually with a corporation, the duration is usually as long as the business exists, and the same thing can be said about the S corporation. Basically, the transfer of interest. Interest can be, for a sole proprietorship, the interest can be transferred, but it's individual proprietorship then ends when it's transferred. It doesn't continue. With the partnership, usually, it has to do with the fact that once the partners it can be assigned, but it's up to the partners to assign it, and it has to be. That's why you have to have a partnership agreement, or we recommend that you have a partnership agreement. Transfer of interest with a corporation, S corporation, is easily transferred between one person and another. So, are there any questions? Okay, here we talk about the same thing, but we talk about the limited liability partnership, or limited partnership, limited liability company, and the limited liability partnership. And we go over, how they're created. Basically, they're all created by going through the Secretary of State in Austin, and you can find the information on their website. Their legal position, they're treated as a legal entity by themselves. Liability, usually you can only be liable for what you have invested in the company. Here the partnership, the company, or the partnership. Transfer of interest. Here the interest for a limited partnership. The interest can be assigned or sold. For a limited liability company. And for a limited liability partnership, the interest can be assigned, and it's usually pretty easy. These are just some important dates that you need to keep in mind, that you need to remember. At the end of January 31st every year, you have to do a sales return. You have to do a payroll tax return. You need to issue to your employees any W-2s, and you need to issue to any payees that you have a 1099. That's by the end of January. By the end of February, you need to have filed any W-2s with the Social Security Administration, and you need to have filed any 1099s and 1096s with the IRS. So by the end of January, you need to issue them, and then by the end of February, you need to have them filed with the proper organization. On March 15th, it's considered that corporate income taxes are due. On April 15th, which is a date that everybody knows, that's when your individual tax returns are due. Partnership and LLC tax returns are due. And you also have to make any estimated income tax payments. So then on April 30th, by the end of the month, your quarterly payroll tax returns are due. And you'll see here on May 15th, the franchise tax return. On June 15th, you have to make an estimated income tax payments. And these are things to keep in mind once you start a business and you have to do quarterly payments for your taxes, for your income. And you'll see that throughout the rest of the year. But the most important dates to remember is to remember that you need to issue your W-2s to your employees and your 1099 to your payees by the end of January. You need to have them filed with the proper organizations by the end of February. And then most of your tax returns are due April 15th. If you're a corporation, your tax return is due a month earlier on March 15th.
Where's the federal unemployment?
Federal unemployment, basically, when you do your payroll tax returns, you're going to pay your unemployment in there. Yes. Next, we're going to talk about franchise taxes, and this is different than income taxes. Franchise taxes is a tax levied at the state level against businesses and partnerships chartered within the state. Basically, here we're talking about like your LLCs, your LLPs, things like that. This is a privilege tax that gives the business the right to be chartered and or operated within the state. So, franchise taxes, the tax rate is 1% for most entities, 0.5% for qualifying wholesalers and retailers. And we can go to the bottom, you'll see the qualification for 0.5% tax rate are taxable entities primarily engaged in retail or wholesale trades qualified to use the 0.5% tax rate. For entities with 10 million or less, it's 0.575, which is a little bit more than 0.5% for a 12-month period. And then this again is for taxes levied by the state against businesses and partnerships chartered within the state. So remember the franchise tax, the due date is May 15th, and for entities that become subject to franchise tax in the previous year, the first report is due is an annual report. Final franchise reports, this is when you're ending the business. It must be filed and paid in the year a Texas entity plans to terminate, merge or withdraw with the state Secretary of State offices, or within 60 days after an out-of-state entity ceases having nexus in Texas, business in Texas.
All my nexus is in Texas?
Yes, all your nexuses are in Texas. Here, we'll just talk briefly about some help that's out there for you on franchise taxes. There's a franchise tax online calculator at this website. For more information about franchise taxes, it's basically, these are state of Texas websites, and the Texas Comptroller's Office is www.windows.state.texas.us. Next, I'll briefly talk about the sales tax and the use taxes. And these are basically state sales taxes and use taxes. They're imposed on all retail sales, leases, and rentals of most goods, as well as taxable services. And these are most likely your city taxes and your county taxes, things like that. Basically, Texas cities, counties, transit authorities, and special purpose districts have the option of imposing an additional local sales tax for a combined total of state and local taxes of 8.25%. Notice, basically, if you go to buy something, you can almost assuredly put 8.25% on that as the sales tax. And here's some of the tax rates. The state is 6.25%. The city is usually 1/4 to 2%. The county is 0.5% to 1.5%. Transit is 1/4% to 1%. Special purpose districts are anywhere from 1/8% to 2%, depending on the local rate. I know I just came back from Houston, and I had basically a special purpose tax on mine for sports tax, because I stayed close to, I guess, what they consider Minute Maid Park, Reliance Stadium District or something. I had no idea I had to pay that kind of tax. The due date for these taxes are monthly, quarterly, or yearly, based upon your qualifications, which is basically, how much sales do you have during the year. So, and it's all, or basically the 20th day of the month following the end of the reporting period. Other taxes, there's one thing that we do is we get taxed to death, right? So, and basically as a business entity, you just pass those taxes on to the consumer. The Texas Comptroller's Office serves the state by collecting more than 60 separate taxes, fees, and assessments. And they collect also the sales tax on behalf of more than 1,400 cities, counties, and other local governments around the state. The state taxes and fees will generate an estimated $77.5 billion in the 2008-2009 budget. So just gives you an idea of just how much we do pay in taxes. These are some of the other taxes that we do pay. You'll see the 9/11 prepaid wireless emergency service fee. We see that on our phone bills all the time. Just to go down, automotive oil sales fee, battery sales fee. You pay a tax on your cigarettes. You pay a tax on your fuel that you put in your car and your gasoline. I just talked about hotel taxes, the different types of taxes that they tax you for. So, and if you want kind of a definition or a list of the different taxes that you do pay, it's www.window.state.texas.us/taxinfo/taxrates.html.